will we do with this moment? How will we be remembered? Look at the opportunities before us.
This election really isn't about the left versus the right. It's about we the people choosing our government and the choice between freedom versus tyranny.
Nobody has a chronic disease burden like we have. Why are we allowing this to happen to our children? Ultimately, the only thing that will save our country is if we choose to love our kids more than we hate each other.
What is going on here is deeper than politics. It is deeply spiritual. We are being called to rise above the hatred and the fear and the evil.
We need to remember above and beyond that we must love our neighbors, that we must treat other people as we hope to be treated.
You want to be a rebel? You want to be a hippie? You want to stick it to the man? Show up on your college campus and try calling yourself a conservative.
America is going to reach heights that it has never seen before. The future is going to be amazing!
Don't you want healthy children? Don't you want a president that's going to make America healthy again?
I come to you today as a former Democrat. I will be a first-time Trump voter tonight.
The people dreamed this country, and it's the people who are making America great again.
The Constitution says treason is punishable by death. You've accused your adversaries of treason. Who specifically are you accusing of treason?
Well, I think a number of people, and I think what you look is that they have unsuccessfully tried to take down the wrong person. These are corrupt politicians, fake news, the Comeys of the world, all of the bad things that went on. It's called the swamp. And you know what happened? And you know what I did? A big favor. I caught the swamp. I caught them all. That's treason. That's treason. He is a criminal. He's a criminal. He got caught. Read his laptop. And you know who's a criminal? You're a criminal for not reporting it. You are a criminal for not reporting it. Joe Biden is a criminal, and he's been a criminal for a long time. And you're a criminal in the media for not reporting it. That's treason. That's treason. If you look at crooked Hillary Clinton, if you look at all of the different people, there was no transition because they came after me trying to do a coup. They came after me spying on my campaign. They started from the day I won and even before I won, from the day I came down the escalator with our First Lady. That's treason. That's treason. And we've caught them. We've caught them all. And we've caught them. We've caught them all. We've got it all on tape. We've caught them all. But should she lose, we'll have an insurance policy and we'll get this guy out of office. And that's what they said and that's what they meant. That's treason. That's treason. They say, holy shit, they caught us. They caught us.
What storm, Mr. President?
You'll find out.
And they know the judgment day shall come.
And welcome, everybody. Happy Wednesday. Today is August 19th, 2026. Welcome back to News Treason Channel 17 and the Q News Review with Mike King, episode number 107 in the books coming up tonight. Mike will be joining us shortly. I wanted to pop in and run through a couple of quick stories for you before we get into his presentation. He's got a lot to go through tonight, a really good one lined up, so I'm not going to take too long. But as always, thank you guys all for being here and piling in over on Pilled, X, and of course, Rumble. We've now been doing this show for well over, 2.5 years, 107 episodes in, and we keep chugging along as the news continues to come out, D-Class continues to happen, and each and every day we seem to be presented with a new set of news for consumption. A bunch of stuff took place yesterday after we finished D-Class. The big news, obviously, was the ex-Fauci advisor from NAID pleading guilty. That is a big one that just happened, I think, while we were on the air yesterday. We have a major crypto summit taking place today in DC that I know we'll be talking about later in the week. And of course, we had some more primaries taking place last night. And that's where I want to quickly focus, because I think, like everything else, you start to see these different stories coming together. It's almost like if you're a sports fan, watching a play in hockey or basketball or football develop. If you've ever kind of sat in the arena and sat up high and watched a sporting event, you kind of get a very interesting perspective on things, and you can kind of see the players start kind of getting into position. You can often see a play developing before it happens, because you're using that high up, or 40,000 foot, if you would, type of view. And I have to say that's kind of what I saw with this entire Democrat socialist narrative that really started coming to fruition a number of months ago. If you really look back, it has all the hallmarks. Throw Mamdani out for a minute, because that was a big one last year. But other than that, it has all the hallmarks of a manufactured narrative, one of which is that it comes out of nowhere. We weren't talking about Democrat socialists last year. We weren't talking about it in the run-up to 2024. We weren't talking about it really for most of Trump's first year in office. So, like, what the heck happened? And then I'm sitting there looking at it and saying, does this really make sense? Although we, of course, have pockets of resistance and whatever you'd like to call them, leftist, libtards, lost forever, the 4 to 6%, pick your favorite term. Of course, we still have that. It's never going to be completely eradicated. But does it really make sense, even with the expenses of the country and the economy not being where it is, does it really make sense that as we have more people than ever waking up, we have more content than ever being plastered out onto social media, exposing the fact that essentially our country pretty much already had been infiltrated and taken over by socialists leading right up through the Obama term, and we're living in D-Class? Like, does it make sense that after 9 years of this operation, that now in 2026 socialism is on the rise more than ever? Does that make sense? The same way the border didn't make sense during the Biden administration, and that, in my humble opinion, was not what we were told. It doesn't make any sense. So then the question starts to become why. And this is, again, the thought processes that were going through my head a number of months ago as I started to see this come together. I said there's a purpose to this. And as it's played out, you can really see where it's taken hold and how it has been an effective operation, in my opinion. It's completely fractured the Democrat Party, what's left of it. It's, in many senses, created a sense of urgency for the MAGA normies to get out and vote, and you're seeing that in large numbers, especially down here in Florida, massive numbers yesterday. And of course, it's causing common sense Democrats, which, let's face it, we talk a lot of crap, but the majority of Democrats do fall in that center left category. It's causing them to reject it as being insane. And I also think, as I've been watching this play out, and I've seen more and more of these clowns win these primaries out of nowhere, I'm like, it's setting up a very interesting situation for the midterms. And again, I believe we're still involved in a military operation. I believe whatever happens in the midterms is going to be planned to happen. however it looks. So that's the lens I'm looking at it. What could we be setting up here with these socialists? Could we be setting up a very easy red wave because public opinion is against them? Sure. Or could we be setting up a situation where, as the rise of the socialists come, maybe there's a little bit of chaos and turmoil around the midterms, and maybe if we do have to do a repeats necessary of a theft, it's going to be all that more obvious to people, because for the majority of sane people, they're not going to buy that, for example, down here in Florida, a Democrat socialist would take out a senator like Ashley Modi down here in Florida, and that's what I want to focus on. So I woke up this morning. I was kind of watching the primary numbers last night. Of course, mostly on the Republican side. But then this one kind of came out of nowhere. And I want to highlight this because I think it just further cements the fact that there's more at play here than what's playing out on the screens of the likes of Fox News and others. So, but take a listen to this.
A shocking win for Democratic socialism. The radical left picked up a victory in the red state of Florida's primaries last night. And the top headline today, a Democratic socialist took out her own party opponent who had a lot of funding and name recognition, highlighting yet again party infighting over what is a Democrat. I'm Harris Faulkner. You are in the Faulkner Focus. Democrat State Representative Angie Nixon with that massive upset over prominent Trump critic and former impeachment cheerleader Alex Vindman. Nixon is a member of the Democrat Socialists of America now. She recently joined them, she said. However, they did not endorse her.
Let me just point this out. We're to believe now that, granted, this is a statewide primary, though, that this woman got 56.1% of the vote, 705,000 votes to 552. A Democrat socialist. And just keep in mind, this is somebody that was not on the radar. This was not a Abdul El Said who got a lot of press leading up to it, or a Graham Plattner that got a lot of national press. This woman wasn't even getting press down here. It wasn't one of the ones that was highlighted and spotlighted by everybody. And we're to believe that she garnered 705,000 votes. I'm not buying it, but let me let this play out.
At the national or the local level. Interesting. Here's a look at her platform. She supports government-run socialized medicine, free child care, free paid family and sick leave, a national rent freeze and stopping all evictions, universal jobs, big tax hikes on those deemed wealthy, and the big socialist favorite, abolishing immigration customs enforcement, or ICE. A lot of people may not be very familiar with who she is. Here is Angie Nixon.
I want to abolish for-profit prisons because I believe right now people aren't educating our children, and they're ushering them into the school to prison pipeline because they want to exploit labor.
Now, to stand up and lock arms and be willful accomplice in this fight against fascism.
HB1D. The clerk will unlock the machine and the members will proceed to vote. Have all members voted?
She had a bullhorn on that one.
Look, there's a lot of places where I could buy this, and yes, I always get accused of being a cheerleader for the state of Florida because I live here, and I can promise you we have many problems down here, plenty here in Palm Beach County, plenty around the big cities. We are by no means perfect. But do I honestly believe that this woman that garnered no national attention, no local attention, wasn't highlighted by anybody else, that she ran the table on that platform in a red state like Florida? I don't, for a minute. Maybe if it was a squeaker, a nail biter, like, by the way, that's what we saw in the other states. So in Michigan and Wisconsin, if you remember, the Democrat socialists won by a hairline margin, a few thousand votes. So in a purple state like Michigan, so we're told, or Wisconsin, the Democrat socialists barely won, or in the case of Francesca Hong, lost. But here in deep red Florida, where we of course have Democrats, obviously, that the Democrats down here overwhelmingly voted 700 and something thousand to 500,000, 56 to 43. Does that make sense? Absolutely not. It just doesn't. There isn't the appetite for that down here. There's not the appetite for that anywhere. But if anything, in a state like this, where a lot of the Democrats that have moved down here from up in New York are more moderate Democrats because they left because they don't want to deal with the crap up there. And we're supposed to believe that they all moved down here from California and New York and New Jersey and Pennsylvania, and they all are voting for a socialist now. That doesn't make any sense. So what is actually going on here? Look, what I think is going on, and you have to understand this is my opinion and my opinion only. You have to all decide what you want to believe for yourselves. But based on what I've been seeing, look, I go back to the 2024 election. And at the end of the day, we know that this entire time since executive order, honestly, since the early drops essentially told us that the military had intervened to allow Trump to win the election. 2020, we let them steal it. Well, 2024, how did Trump win if there's machines with algorithms that favor the votes over to the Democrat? You can't outvote an algorithm. Like I said, I put in one vote for Trump. The machine splits it however it wants. It could go 3/4 of the vote to the Democrat and 1/4 to the Republican. The more you vote for the Republican, the more votes the Democrats get. So in 2024, the White Hats must have had some ability to unrig that election, which would logically mean that they've probably had control of the machines and they're using them maybe to shuffle the board. They're using them to catch people still. I believe there's a lot of stuff still going on which would warrant the optics of certain elections, think Spencer Pratt, being stolen. And that's continuing as part of the exposure. And so I have to be honest, this may sound crazy to you, but this is just where my head goes. I think, if anything, the White Hats rigged the election down here to put this socialist in, because she should get curb stomped by Senator Ashley Modi, the sitting senator now, come the midterms. And if she doesn't, I can promise you there will be a lot of people paying attention to a steal. I don't know if it's going to go that way, but she's either going to get completely destroyed, which would make sense, or maybe there'll be some shenanigans. I don't know how it's going to play out, but I honestly do believe that I don't think those numbers are the least bit real. And I don't think we're in a situation where the Democrats have the ability to rig the election for the Democrats socialists. Otherwise, they would have rigged the election so Trump didn't win and they wouldn't be in this battle right now. So you start to just logically deduce this, and this is what I'm coming to. I think they did this to shuffle her in and to create a little bit of a shockwave here where most people wouldn't expect it. Now, people expect it in New York. They might expect it in some places in Michigan and other places where we've seen a lot of issues. They wouldn't. LA, you don't expect it here. So I tend to look at those numbers, which if they're not believable, then what is actually going on? That's where my head goes. I think she was slotted in there on purpose, and let's see how the clown show plays out. Another clue is that Donald Trump was one of the first people to come out and comment on it, and he wasn't talking about this person before. And here's what he said: the most gratifying loss last night was that of a real treasonous creep, Alexander Vindman, to a radical left lunatic who can't speak or think properly and will go down to certain defeat at the hands of Ashley Modi, a true fantastic senator from the great state. And by the way, he left the word out. That's interesting. The great state of Florida. Vindman, if you can remember, was the one who lied about my perfect call with President Zelensky of Ukraine. Isn't it interesting how this all connects? Only to find out that the conversation was routinely recorded and proved that it was 100% in the right, completely innocent. If it was indeed a perfect call, and the Democrats' fake impeachment effort massively failed. Vindman should be prosecuted for what he did. So isn't this interesting? Back in May, you had Tulsi Gabbard declassify the files about exactly what Donald Trump is talking about here. The impeachment hoax, the Ukraine impeachment hoax. It was all staged. And then, of course, we've had all this stuff coming out with Anthony Fauci, which would connect back to the biolabs that Tulsi Gabbard declassified in Ukraine. And then, of course, you have Hunter Biden popping his head back up right now, making waves. And that connects to Ukraine. So I find it all very, 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 very interesting that the gentleman that was unseated down here by the Democrat socialist was one of the people that was at the crux of the Ukraine impeachment hoax. So do you see why I think they might have actually staged this? Do you think why does it maybe make sense? You kill two birds with one stone. You shuffle somebody out who will likely probably face some, or maybe already has faced some kind of justice for what he did during the impeachment hoax. And at the same time, you're able to kind of further that scare narrative of the Democrat socialists, which is, whether you like it or not, working swimmingly nationwide. That's what I see out of this entire situation down here. And again, like I said, it sets up an interesting situation come midterm time. Trump is right. Down here especially, this woman should get destroyed by the sitting senator, Ashley Modi. So either she will, and it's just easier for her to win, which could be the case with many of the races where the Democrat socialists are, because, by the way, you go across the board, Mike Rogers up in Michigan is flying against El Said. He's up by 6 or 7 or 8 points now. They're setting it up that all these Democrat socialists should lose because nobody's in favor of it. So either they're all going to get curb stomped during the election, or if there's a steal, it's going to make it that much more obvious as to people as to what's happening. So we'll have to wait. I don't know what's going to happen. Nobody does. But that to me is what I see going on. And it's just kind of what happened last night in Florida with this whole thing further cements my theory that there's quite a bit of white hat string pulling going on to set up this Democrat socialist situation that we're in right now. Again, that's just my opinion. You guys have to form your own, but that's what I see out of that. One other thing I just wanted to quickly touch on, because we covered it yesterday on D-Class, is the return of the Charlie Kirk narrative. Again, whether you guys are sick of it or not, I do believe it's important. I think at some point we're going to see some kind of clarity on this, and that's exactly why it's been this push-pull of this narrative for the last almost year now. We're coming up in September 10th on the year anniversary of the quote-unquote shooting. And we talked about on Tuesday, or was it Saturday? I believe it was Saturday, the debate between Candace Owens and Andrew Wilson that went mega viral and reintroduced this entire situation to the public lexicon again. And as per usual, we see these in twos or threes. It's usually one event, one interview, one debate in this case that kind of returns the situation to the public spotlight again. And now you're seeing again, in my humble opinion, the kayfabe between Joe Kent and Dan Bongino. And Bongino is, in my opinion, the perfect person to do this. He's got one of the largest podcasts in the world, once again, since he returned. Just saw something the other day. I don't know if it's actually happened yet, but he is returning to terrestrial radio. So now he's going to have a bigger audience. And he, right in the heels of this Candace Owens interview, is doing what Dan does best and stirring the pot, putting more eyes on Joe Kent. Take a look at this.
Post this morning. And I thought to myself, how many suckers are going to continue to believe this? This is at USA. Yep. John. Yep. All caps, of course. And Andy, that means this is really important. Of course, all caps. Investigation into foreign involvement in Charlie Kirk's assassination blocked by the FBI. Whoa, all caps too. Got to be true then, all caps. Kash Patel blocked Joe Kent, former director of counterterrorism, from investigating the foreign leads into Charlie's assassination. I trust Joe Kent. That's really great. Why would the FBI block this? Joe Kent tells Jimmy Dore, here we go. Isn't he like a comedian? It's like a comedian, right? That he was at NCTC, Joe, and he was blocked from investigating Charlie Kirk's killing after the FBI said it had everything it needed. The case would be transferred to state authorities. Okay. Folks, I'm going to make this really simple for you. So again, this is that point of the show where we're reaching a truth red line. If you're not interested in the truth, please stop now, because this is going to be really painful. There's nothing you can say to dispute the fact that 3 + 3 = 6, no matter how hard you try, okay? Joe Kent is continuing to insist he was blocked from doing something he's not authorized to do. I can't think of a simpler example. I just put it in ChatGPT to make it really easy in case you think like I'm making this up. Joe cannot answer a simple question. What investigative law enforcement authorities or powers you had at NCTC that you were blocked from engaging in? So I put in this really simple one everyone can understand. So if Joe was an investigator into the case that was authorized to investigate the case, then he should have subpoena power or someone, correct? But because NCTC is not an investigative body, I just put this simple question in to help you guys. ChatGPT is like, in case you're stupid, it doesn't say that, but like, here in shorthand, FBI is the investigative agency with compulsory legal authorities. NCTC is there for intelligence fusion and interagency counterterrorism coordination. Can we put flags in the chat? Just put them in advance.
All right. So I like Dan Bongino. I believe at the heart of it, he's a patriot. I also believe he's playing a role in this. But on the surface, I don't like the role that he's been playing in the entire Charlie Kirk narrative, because much like the Jack Posobics of the world, they've been taking this angle of, this is what happened. We got the guy that did it. It was a lone shooter. We don't need to look at anything else. Nothing to see here. And if you question it, you're a crazy conspiracy theorist and a traitor. Now, we don't play that game anymore in 2026. And by the way, when you read the comments on anybody that does take that angle on Charlie Kirk or anything else, what you will find is a lot of people that are giving backlash and saying, don't tell me not to question things. Unfortunately, what you will also find is what I call the MAGA sheep. What you will find is people that are a Bongino or a Posobiec, or you name your favorite influencer, loyalist, and they are simply parroting what they're told, and they're doing exactly what they shouldn't be, which is not questioning anything. And they're in the comments saying, that's right, Kent is a traitor. Tucker Carlson is a traitor. Candace Owens is a traitor. Look, Candace Owens, you don't have to like her. And she may not be completely right, but she's a horrible person for questioning what everybody saw was clearly not a 30-06. And we also, obviously, we know what we believe happened there. So what I believe is going on here is, again, I've said for a long time that the entire Charlie Kirk presentation to the masses, it has been designed to be a thought exercise. It's designed to allow a certain group, and in the case of this, it's many, many millions, tens and tens and tens of millions, to kind of relive a JFK type of situation and say, well, wait a second, this lone shooter thing doesn't make sense. And there is stuff that doesn't add up, and they did cover up the ground, and all the things we're seeing, I believe they want that to happen. And I believe that there are certain people, either knowingly or unknowingly, playing the role of shut up and don't ask questions. And that doesn't work for a lot of people in 2026 anymore. In fact, that's going to cause more people to dig than intended. The more you're going to tell people, don't look here, the more we're going to dig in 2026. I'm not talking about anons. I'm talking about the general population that has been awakened. So, Bongino, again, while I love the guy and I think he's playing a role, like if you listen to any of his commentary on Candace or otherwise, he's always been the guy whenever somebody comes out with a new question about Charlie Kirk that is going on a rampage and telling people not to ask questions and telling people that they're wrong or that they're, traitors, or that Candace's used some crazy language. So what do I think it's doing? Well, it's just putting more eyes on Joe Kent. Joe Kent, the director of the National Counterterrorism Center, who would know more about any of this stuff than most people in government, held an incredibly high clearance, came out not long after this happened. In fact, I believe it was only a few months after the Kirk situation, and said there was a foreign component to this that we did not investigate. He didn't say Israel. That was insinuated. But he said there was a foreign component that we did not completely investigate. Now, what's wrong with questioning that? In the year 2026, with everything we've been through, should we just blindly be accepting what the FBI or anybody else in the government says when you have somebody like a Joe Kent who had that level of clearance saying there was a foreign component? Is that a treasonous, traitorous thing to do? Should people be raging at the machine at their microphones over that? Of course not. And I do believe that's the design of it. And like I said, I think there's a lot of people, unfortunately, and this goes back to what we've been talking about with this manufactured MAGA split and some of the people that are just blindly doing everything that Donald Trump says or everything that one of his associates say, everything that a Dan Bongino or a Kash Patel. That's not what they want out of this operation. They want a free thinking populace that questions everything, at least the majority that way. They don't want people, look, go back to what we showed the other day when we showed the JP Sears video, brilliantly making fun of the people calling Tucker Carlson a horrible person for his 10 points. And then we proved that his 10 points were exactly the same as Trump's agenda. So think about the mindset that we're trying to break, not on the left, on the right. The people that, because somebody says Tucker Carlson's points are horrible, he's a traitor, don't read them and just repeat that. We don't want that either on our side. And that's why I think they're doing things like putting out the same 10 points as Trump, labeling it Tucker Carlson, seeing how many people will fall for it and call him a traitor without actually reading it. I think there's a lot of the same going on here with the Charlie Kirk situation. You have these voices that are rightfully questioning. It doesn't matter what you believe. Almost nobody with any common sense believes the lone shooter. So why should we not be questioning? Why should we not be listening? You can hate Joe Kent all you want. But if somebody's saying that there might be a foreign component, why shouldn't we say, hey, let's see the evidence of what you found? And that's what I believe they're trying to get people to do. They're trying to continue this thought exercise. And honestly, I do believe down at the heart of it that just like he did with Candace Owens 2 or 3 times before, Candace Owens would put out a video that, they don't want people to see about Charlie Kirk. And Dan Bongino would go out and rage on social media and to his 10 million people. And all it did was elevate her message more. And I believe it's the same thing here. So Joe Kent came back and explained exactly what he was talking about. And I don't know, makes sense to me. You guys decide.
I'm going to briefly describe the role of the National Counterterrorism Center in the investigation of the assassination of Charlie Kirk. So NCTC analysts are a part of every joint terrorism task force throughout the entire country. The JTTFs are typically led by the FBI. NCTC's role within the JTTF is to determine if there is any foreign nexus. So that would be a foreign country, a foreign government, a foreign individual, a foreign company. If there's any foreign connection or nexus to an act of domestic terrorism, like the assassination of Charlie Kirk. So that's what NCTC analysts were doing as part of the JTTF to assist the investigation of the assassination of Charlie Kirk. So NCTC analysts were operating at the request of the FBI to determine if there was any kind of foreign connection or foreign nexus to the assassination of Charlie Kirk. So NCTC is a unique organization within the intelligence community. It's part of the intelligence community. It can see all the operational traffic, all the raw reporting coming from the forward-facing intelligence community, the CIA, the DIA, the NSA, etc. But it can also see the raw operational reporting coming from the FBI and other federal law enforcement agencies. And it does this. It has this authority in order to connect the dots. NCTC was formed after 9/11 because of the failures of the CIA and FBI and their inability to communicate prior to 9/11. So NCTC has that unique role. That's why we're part of the JTTF. So at the request of the FBI, we were looking to see if there was any kind of foreign nexus or connection to the assassination of Charlie Kirk. In very short order, we were told that our services were no longer required, that we no longer had access to the repository the FBI had where all the information on the investigation was being kept. And then the FBI said shortly thereafter they were going to hand over the investigation to the Utah law enforcement. I protested. I disagreed. I thought that we still had a lot more work to do. I still believe that to this day that we had more leads to run down to determine if there was any kind of foreign connection. I'm not saying there definitively was. I am only saying that we still had more work to do to ensure that we actually did our due diligence to ensure there was no foreign nexus to Charlie Kirk's assassination. A big issue that I have, and I think many others have about the assassination, is that we've been told that there's just a lone gunman that's involved and responsible, and that process is playing out in court. However, there was people that were posting online ahead of Charlie's assassination that he was going to be killed that day in Utah. So that strongly indicates that there were more people involved in the plot to kill Charlie Kirk. So I think it's critical that we continue to ask who killed Charlie Kirk, how, and why. And I'll just close with a Charlie Kirk quote, that it is critical that we continue to ask questions because it is the only thing that keeps us free. Thank you, and God bless.
Wow. What an asshole. Sounds like a traitor to me. Look, you guys decide, right? You saw how the Bongino crowd is handling it and what Joe Kent said. Again, regardless of the manufactured, which I believe to be split with Kent and Trump, there's absolutely nothing wrong with what he said there. That's exactly what we should be doing. And so, look, at the end of the day, I called it kayfabe because that's what I believe it is. We've seen this nonstop with this thing. Bongino is very often at the heart of it, of going on a rampage, and then which causes more people to go in and look to see what said person actually stated. And I think when you get to the Joe Kent video and the explanation, it does make sense. And it does jive a lot more with, honestly, what I think most people are thinking, that this lone gunman thing is a load of crap. So I know people don't like it. They don't like the infighting. They don't like the role playing. They don't like the kayfabe. But let's face it, guys, drama is what captures the attentions of the masses, whether we like it or not. In a fifth generation psychological war, you simply must use the tools that are at your disposal. And if you want to get attention through all the noise of this world of entertainment and social media, drama is unfortunately what gets it, and therefore that's what you have to use. And we've been watching this happen with Trump and his circle for a decade now. What's taking place here should be no different and no surprise to anybody. And like I said, we just continue to see how this Charlie Kirk narrative plays out. I've said it a million times. I do believe this will be one of the pieces of the puzzle that does fall back on a foreign deep state, which does blow back against some kind of collusion between the Mossad and our own intelligence agencies. I do believe that's going to happen. I don't know when. It may take a year, it may take 2 years. I don't know. But it is an important one because, like I said, the thought exercise that the people paying attention, and like I said, it is the tens of millions, the thought exercise that has been robbed of this country for decades whenever one of these events took place, is actually now getting to happen every day in real time. And it's getting to take place on massive platforms like the ones of Candace Owens and Dan Bongino and others, to the tens of millions each and every day. And as far as the Great Awakening, that's exactly what that is. Allowing people in real time to discuss those things which in the past the government was able to simply use their mockingbird media to tell people to shut up and don't ask questions. So I don't have a problem with it. And I think this, again, I know a lot of folks, every time I bring up Charlie Kirk, they get fatigued. But I do believe it's as far as the Great Awakening, and as far as teaching people how to think and dissect this stuff as a populace so that they can't weaponize it against us in the future. I think it is one of the most important operations that's going on. Again, that's not to take anything away from the children or election fraud or pharma or any of those other things. I'm just talking as far as thought exercises go that we're being presented with. I do believe this is one of the most important ones that's out there. So that's why I will continue to cover it anytime it bubbles up this way again. So with that being said, whole lot of other stuff going on, but we'll get to that tomorrow on the roundtable and in other shows later in the week. A lot of stuff coming out from all different directions right now. But tonight, as always, is about the one and only Mike King. And I know he's got a great, optimistic presentation for you guys tonight that I think will help highlight some of the advances we've made in this operation, despite the length of it. I think you'll see a positive message out of Mike tonight. So looking forward to bringing him in. I do just want to take 1 minute before we do and thank our friend Matt Geiger at Verity Metals. Silver is back on the rise again, back up into the mid-60s as of the time of this. And as always, I want to remind you guys, Matt is an anon like one of us. In fact, he'll be coming back on the channel here in the coming weeks to hang out with us. Great guy, individual business owner, much like our good friend David Becker of Mid-Atlantic Business Alliance. When you call Verity Metals, you will get a personalized service. It's not a big corporation. In fact, at the heart, Matt has a storefront. So this commercial you'll see is about IRAs, but I'll always remind you, if you want to buy just individual silver or gold in any quantity without any minimums, and regardless if you have an IRA or a 401k, you can simply go to Verity Metals and they will be able to help you out. So I want to thank him for his continued support of our community and this channel. And when I come back, we will be with our good friend, Mike King.
Your financial advisor isn't going to tell you this. Your bank won't mention it. And your 401k custodian, they're hoping you never find out. You can convert your retirement account into physical gold and silver, real metal in your hands, or stored exactly where you decide. It's called a gold IRA rollover, and it's 100% legal, 100% IRS approved. And your financial, quote, experts, they don't get a commission when you take control like this. Wall Street wants your money in their system, in their accounts, where they control it. But physical gold, that's yours. Can't be hacked, can't be deleted, can't vanish when the market crashes. Verity Metals, we're the experts they don't want you to call. Convert your IRA or 401k into gold and silver that you can actually hold. Call 480-717-9081 or visit veritymetals.com. Because your retirement should be in your hands, not theirs.
The one and only Mike King of realnewsandhistory.com. Mike, happy Wednesday, episode number 107. Good to see you, brother. Welcome back.
There you go. You got to come.
Yeah, welcome back.
Should have something special planned, but there you go. Yeah,
I would love to say that the lack of being able to see your beautiful face impacted the show last week, but we still had a great attendance and great viewership.
I don't know what happened. Yeah, we did. You missed my great tan. I mean, I still got something. Frankly, I was a little burned that day, so maybe it was for the best. Yeah.
Good. Well, glad you had a good trip, and we'll jump right back into it. Yeah, man, just a lot going on, a lot coming out all over the info space. I covered earlier in the show I don't know if you've seen the Joe Kent, Dan Bongino war that's been going on, but they're seemingly bringing back the Charlie Kirk narrative. They had that big Candace Owens interview last week, which kind of broke the internet, and now this. So I like seeing that story maintained, because like I said, I think at the end of the day that's going to end up pointing to our friends over in the in Tehran over there. I'm not in Tehran, in Israel, but it's just funny to watch. People just get so emotional about this stuff. But I'll say this before we just jump into it. I highlighted earlier in the show because I know a lot of people are like sick of that narrative, but I'm convinced now, after really digging into some of the stuff that we've been looking at, that there is a third effort going on besides like getting people to think about Charlie Kirk or Israel or whoever might have done it. I'm really paying attention to the comments, and I think they're purposely trying to shatter I don't even want to call them the MAGA normies. I want to call them the MAGA like cult followers. Right. Like I read the comments under like Bongino. I respect Bongino. I've always liked him, but he's a freaking bully, like straight up. And with the Charlie Kirk narrative, he's one of those people that comes out and is like, look, here's the way it is. This is what happened. If you ask questions, just go screw yourself.
Right.
And it's very interesting to read the comments and see that there's like almost like a 50-50 of people that are like, hey, screw you. Don't tell me not to question things.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then there's the other group, and this is the group I think they're trying to target with the MAGA split.
Yeah.
There's the other group that are going, Joe Kent's a traitor. He should be strung up. And I'm like, wait,
Yeah.
what did he do? All he's saying is we should investigate a few
Yeah.
more things. And these people are
Yeah.
just parroting. And I
Right.
think they're trying to shatter that parroting. I really do think that's what they're trying to get people away from.
Yeah, and the deeper the divide, the more publicity the division gets, and more people come in. And one of my stories tonight, we'll touch upon that. So even the naysayers, play a key element in this. Both the winning ones, like Dan Bongino, he's obviously part of the operation, but also you're fooling your own people, and that plays a strategic role as well. Because if everybody just jumped off the MAGA ship at once, now you really wouldn't have that conflict. So it's important to have that conflict, because that's what's going to draw. I mean, everybody's a reactionary, and this is all built around that.
Yep.
This is what's going to draw the anti-Trump people in.
Yep.
To the Massey Kent camp, So, so it's just the fact that a discussion like this is great. Yeah.
Yeah. And look, it has to happen. I'll say this. A lot of people were disillusioned with what went on in the primaries down here. Byron Donalds. There's a classic example. Now, I didn't vote for him. And he's got a lot of skeletons in the closet. And look, at the end of the day, I think those skeletons are being used, and he'll do whatever Trump tells him. But at the end of the day, he has, a lot of baggage in his closet. And Trump said vote for him, so he won 57% of the vote. It's not supposed to be blindly do what Trump wants. I think that's what they're ultimately trying to break apart. Do I worry about Donald's becoming governor? No, because I think that Trump is picking people that he's just going to control regardless. But we have to get off that my favorite voice of authority told me to hate this person, so therefore I'm going to blindly hate him without reading anything that he actually says. And I think there's a lot of that going on here. But anyway, let's jump into it. We got a contest winner to announce. You want to tee this up?
Yeah, well, I sent you a video. We're going to play a clip from that, but I had extended the contest a few more days because my site had been down, and it was a nice showing. We got quite a few people to join. It was $3 a month. Some did more to get more entries, but as you know, we picked a winner. We're going to announce soon, and that winner is going to receive not one but two of my books of his or her choice, autographed. And I think we'll do something similar, a little down the road a little bit. So we have a winner. Let's see. I already did a video on my channel, but I want to play the clip, and hopefully she's watching. Well, I just gave away the gender. And I'll be following up with her to get an email. So
all right,
let's
here
see.
we go. The winner of the contest.
Yeah. Hi, Mike King, realnewsandhistory.com. And it's time to select the winner of the contest. This was the contest for the drawing to win 2 copies of your choice of any of my books, autographed copies. Has 36 books in all. And to enter, you had to sign up as an automatic monthly donor. Got a good response, like 30-something people. And the minimum was $3. Some did 5, 10, 15. That's great. It helps to offset the huge revenue loss from being holocausted from Amazon. So it was a great contest. Okay. And, real soon I'll be doing another similar promotions, give stuff away. But just for entering, you still got the PDFs and the subscription to the Anti-New York Times. So, without any further ado, here I've got all of the entrants, people who entered. There's going to be a separate drawing for people who were existing supporters. This were the people who joined up at Buy Me a Coffee for a minimum $3 or more. So if I pick your name, you're going to win any 2 books of your choice from my list of 36 books, autographed. All right. Stir these up here and see what we got. Linda B. I'm just going to give the first name and the last initial. I don't, some people are sensitive about their identities going out. So Linda, there was only one Linda B in this drawing, so you know who you are if you're watching this. I'm also going to be sending an email to Linda. Linda B wins 2 books, any 2 Mike King books of your choice, autographed. And to find those, you go to, it's linked in the description box below, my books and PDF page, and just go through the menu, pick out any 2 you like, such as The Secret Plan to Save Humanity, a summary of the Q operation. 9/11, 25th anniversary is coming up. Can you believe it? Crash Course 9/11 Inside Job. Now, if you didn't win, you still should get these books, either in physical format or you can get the whole PDF package for just $29. It's a steal. So have a look at the link below. Crash Course, New World Order. This is the cabal in 1 hour. Over 250 years of history. Just a basic framework to understand the problem. The Bad War, The Truth Never Taught about World War II. That was banned by Amazon in 2017. The Song That Never Ends, Debunking the Holocaust. These are all great books. They really are. They're clear and concise, easy to understand. You'll love my books if you haven't read them already.
There it is.
Yeah.
Congratulations to Linda B. You're the winner. 2 autographed Mike King books, which I'm jealous. I don't even have one yet, Mike. I still keep saying I got to order one from you and ask you to autograph it for me. I need it for my collection. But congratulations, Linda B., the big winner. And just once again, I'll say it for Mike, of course. The donations are a big part at this point. I've been putting it up on the screen. It is linked in the description below. buymeacoffee.com/Mike King. It's again, a big loss losing Amazon. So any support the community can give to Mike at this time. You guys are here each and every week through now 107 episodes. You see the amazing work that he does. So support him by buying his books, making a donation, all that kind of stuff helps Mike do continue to dominate the unique niche that he's created. So congratulations, Linda B.
And thank you to everybody who participated.
Yeah,
all
absolutely. Right. All right, let's jump into it, Mike. We got a 3-fer as usual tonight, and guys, you can find. You'll find we have a lot of new people watching this, so I'm just going to say some stuff that maybe you guys will already know. Each and every Wednesday we do this show. Mike combines his unique knowledge of over 30 years of study of our true history with being a pretty much practically an OG Q follower, and really combines the two, and that's what we do on this show each and every Wednesday. So we always love you guys tuning in, of course, but also the work here that you see, if you want, by becoming a monthly subscriber of, what is it, like $5 or above at realnews and history.com, you'll get these emails into your inbox pretty much almost, practically every day. So that's another way you can support Mike and also be able to get his perspective. Mike writes everything really, really current. So when there's something happening in the news cycle, something that we're probably also talking about on D-Class and the other shows, he's already out there scanning the paper of record and seeing what is being said and kind of dissecting it for you right in your inbox. That's another great way to support him. But yeah, Mike, let's jump into the first story, and love the title of this one from realnewsandhistory.com. More proof that Q has already won. What do you got with this one, Mike?
Well, I thought I should do, I like to do these morale boosters from time to time because it's a very long, protracted war. And it's already exceeded the timeline that we had expected, but it is what it is. There's no point complaining about that. But until this plays out for the public and the public manifestation of the storm arrives, etc., I think it's good from time to time to take stock of not only of the things that have been accomplished visibly, but also appreciate the things that did not happen. And there's two items here in particular, three stories featuring two items, both appearing in the New York Times on the same day or a day apart, to illustrate what I mean about being thankful for things that are visible. New York Times headline: Top science body deletes climate chapter from judge's manual. Subtitle: The National Academic of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine had been under pressure from Republican leaders, including President Trump. And this is very important because, they got the judicial hooked up in these environmental policies. Right now, they're taking it out of the judicial manual. So the judges are no longer coming under pressure to participate in this persecution of polluters, right? Polluters being defined as anyone who produces CO2, which is just plant.
Right.
And another headline, again, pertaining to the global warming hoax, or I should say the death of the global warming hoax now. Trump administration kills a flagship annual report on the Arctic. The top of the world is warming faster than any other region. Now remember, this is the New York Times, but they still have to keep the front of libtardation, right? So ignore that. For 20 years, the Arctic Report card chronicled the extraordinary transformation. So they put out this annual report, and on the basis of that, more harmful policies and scare stories. Well, that's done. So he's killed the flagship annual report on the Arctic. Now, prior to this, the whole scam was already killed anyway when he pulled out of the Paris Climate Accords. Greta Thunberg gave up her career as a climate activist and became a full-time anti-Israel protester. So they got a twofer out of that one. But this just shows how deep the cleansing is. Now they're removing vestiges like reports and judicial manuals. So it's dead, and that's a big deal. I'm going to explain why. So that's the climate change hoax. Now, in a separate story, Homeland Security intensifies pursuit of non-citizens on voter rolls. Immigrants who said that they inadvertently registered to vote while obtaining or renewing driver's licenses are increasingly facing deportation under the Trump administration. This is all Executive Order 13848. The voter fraud problem has been addressed. It is no more. It's not to say they may not allow some of it to continue for optical reasons, but they've got a handle on this. Okay. Yep. So these are the two great victories right here.
Yep. But Mike,
integrity.
Just before you continue, and let me add one thing that I covered earlier in the show. We had, look, but Mike, we're still seeing elections stolen everywhere. Okay. Look,
yeah,
I'll keep this as quick as possible. The machines are still there. The machines are the number one way that votes are rigged, despite all the illegals, despite all the mail-in balloting, right? So I've said for years, you have to, if you're going to scream about election fraud, you have to then ask yourself how Donald Trump won in 2024, right? The only way he could have won is if somebody took off the algorithm that was giving 3/4 of a vote to Biden for every one vote, that Trump got. So that's how it works. It would split the vote. Trump would get a quarter, you can't, and Biden would get 3/4. So right there, you have to say, well, the White Hats had control of the machines to not let them tweak the algorithm for Trump to win. But the other example I gave at the top of the show is we were just told that down here in Florida that a Democrat socialist won and won huge in the Senate race. Look, people want to call me biased because I live here. I can promise you there is no way a Democrat socialist with the absurd narrative won in this red state. In New York, you want him to say that's possible, I guess. But when I saw that this morning, and I have no way of proving it, I'm now on the horse of, I believe that the White Hats may be rigging some of these primaries to push these Democrat socialists through, just so either they get trounced in the midterms if it goes that way, or if there's a steal, it's that much more obvious. But I think this Florida race is a great example, and Trump right away came in and commented on it. She happened to beat out one of the main proponents of the impeachment, I think impeachment 2.0 with Ukraine, and he called the guy treasonous when he lost this morning. So, it seems to me like he's taking a victory lap, like, I knocked you out. And my gut, and I might be wrong, my gut is when I see stuff like that happen in Florida, that not only is this Democrat socialist thing a psyop, but I think in some cases they might actually be rigging the Democrat primaries just to put these guys front and center.
Well, it's the AOC template. She was the first, and she knocked out a big name Democrat in the primary, someone who hated Trump. I think it's Trump's district, Queens, and was expected to be one of the finalists to replace Nancy Pelosi as Speaker whenever she retired, Joe Crowley. But yeah, all of these Democrat socialists, they're Q left. And if there's any election day chicanery or what appears to be so, you can be sure that's part of the program, because the Congress isn't even real. I don't know. Are they convening there? Maybe they are. Maybe they are. But the whole the voting and the acting, everybody's under orders. They're either agents or they're under submission. But this is what you want to look at, the fundamental stuff that's associated with Executive Order 13848 and the NCWIS Commission. It's all been taken care of. So I don't get caught up in these. It's all part of the show. I can tell you 100%. Whatever happens in a few months from now, in the midterms, if the Democrats take the House and Senate, fine. If they get blown away, fine. I mean, it's their script, and they know where they're going with it. But I'm keeping my eye on these things here that continue to be reported, and it's out there, the visible stuff. It's just like you said, how do you safeguard elections post-polls? So that's over. All of that fraud is over, including the machines now. I'm sure of it.
Yep. I'm with you.
So these represent a pair of called shots from Q. Q called these shots specifically. Further confirmed two historic changes which this once black-pilled historian up until late 2017 would never have believed possible. Election fraud as American as apple pie, and it was getting worse by the year. Never thought that would ever be addressed. How are you going to do that? They call you racist, right? And then the other one being the climate hoax. Again, something that seemed unstoppable and just gaining in momentum by the year. Because, remember now, a couple generations of school kids came up on this bullshit. This is almost 50 years old, this climate hoax.
Yep.
And how important is the global warming hoax and election fraud? Both of them, on their own, had the ability to end the ball game and put us under one world globalist Marxist government. Both of them. Because that's what the climate con was. It was a backdoor mechanism for one world government, at least in the economic sense. It was so dangerous. And the same goes for voter fraud. You continue electing leftists, it's over. And had Hillary won, it would have gotten even worse, because they would start naturalizing all of the illegal aliens, so they wouldn't even technically be illegal voters, right? So these were death blows. These were loaded guns pointed right at our heads, and they've been totally deactivated. People ought to ask themselves, where would we be right now after 10 years more of the global warming hysteria and the Paris Climate Accords? We were bound. That was a treaty. Treaty supersedes the U.S. Constitution. Mm-hmm. We were bound by treaty to hit the emissions targets mandated by the Paris Climate Accords. So they could have throttled private industry at will, or even individuals with that. And then the voter fraud, they could have just elected in perpetuity criminals.
Mike, I don't think it's a stretch. You know, once again, I'm saying this for some of the newer folks. I know the regulars will know this. I don't think it's a stretch to say at this point, in 2026, we'd be in year 2 after the 8 years of Hillary, right? So knowing what we know, knowing what was in the drops, I mean, we would have likely already gone through probably 6 years of extended lockdowns from COVID. And we probably would have already either gone through or about to go through an actual Sum of All Fears event, which we know from the drops would have led to, many believed, the suspension of the Constitution.
Yeah.
And then all this other stuff, you know, and the actual 15-minute cities and the actual carbon taxes and carbon credits and everything else. So,
everything that they're showing us now as mimicry would have been reality, and that's the whole point of showing us.
Correct.
The whole Middle East would have blown up, World War III, NATO against Russia, World War III. Okay, if we see it now, it's going to be play acted, but it would have been real. We're talking 4 horses of the apocalypse stuff here: war, pestilence, lockdown. We certainly wouldn't be having this discussion on the internet, that's for sure. More than likely, we'd even be dead or in a camp somewhere.
Yep.
And this could be the second year of Big Mike as president.
Right.
If there was even a country to be president of, we might, as very well by now, have been just a regional province, an administrative region in the whole global system. That's how bad it was. But we didn't get that. And these were 2 key elements of that, because the voter fraud would have made it impossible to ever vote your way out of it. Okay. And then the climate change hoax, they could have just regimented us. And indeed, that's the whole point of it. It's all in my book, Climate Boogeyman. That's why they created the climate change hoax. And some of the people in private, I've got quotes in the book, they even said this is an ideal backdoor mechanism for global governance. So, but they're gone. They're dead now. So, let's not, when we want to complain about the timing and when is this op going to be over, I know it's frustrating and tedious, but focus on things like that. I'm telling you right now, many of us would not even be alive right now.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. The alternative would have been just terrible. And I'll repeat one other thing. Rather than this is just me, I can't tell people how to think. But the way I keep my head about it is, to your point, the narratives that are being put out are representative of what they wanted to do. So to me, the way I look at it is, the more I see darkness being broadcast on the television, the more I know that we're further out from that.
Right.
Right. So each time they introduce a new thing, even California they put in a crazy law about tires yesterday. They're going to pass a law where basically every tire is obsolete. Now, am I going to freak out about that and say the plan isn't working? No, like that is showing the people the kind of stuff they wanted to do. So the more they introduce more craziness, the more I know that long term, none of that's going to hold.
Right.
That's how I gauge it.
Yeah. So those are the issues. That's my book, Climate Boogeyman. I wrote that in 2015. And what motivated me, inspired me to write that, was precisely due to the fact that the situation seemed so bleak. Right around this time, there was a hurricane. Where was it? A hurricane hit Carolinas or Florida, and the media was just pounding us. Well, this is climate change. It was really bad. This is Greta Thunberg's heyday. She's on the cover of Time magazine. The Paris Climate Accord had passed, and everybody's celebrating it. Gore and Kerry. And I knew how bad it was and what it entailed. So, kind of I'm definitely in a black pill frustrated mode when I wrote this book. But it's a good book. I had a lot of fun with it. And then there, on the right there, you see the other issue, that cartoon, all the dead people voting. So these were major initiatives of the deep state, which are no longer exist. So let's be thankful.
From the slimes.
From the slimes. Quote, the Trump administration has pulled federal funding for an annual report chronicling the changing environment of the Arctic. Every year for the past two decades, the Arctic Report Card has provided a checkup on the health of the region. And then every year they would trumpet this on the fake news media. Oh, it's getting worse. You know, why do they pick on the Arctic? If it's global warming, it should be universal, because nobody goes up there, so you can make whatever outlandish claim you want. There's no more ice or whatever. Now the report's coordinator and publisher, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, is withdrawing its support for the report card. I mean, that is the heart and soul. This and NASA. The acronym here is NOAA, of the global warming hoax. And now they're coming out withdrawing their support for the report card. This is just as unusual as Bill Gates having announced, it's no big deal, climate change. So what's going on here? The hoax is being killed. And I think the difficulty with this one is people really, unless you read something like my book, they just kind of think, it was a liberal thing, and they use it as an excuse to get more regs and taxes. It's much more than that. It's that. It's also a big financial fraud. People are lining their pockets with all of this money used to fight global climate change and everything. But on the highest level, a clear pathway to one world government that nobody would even suspect. Brutal tyranny. Your electric bills and your gasoline would just be through the roof. You think it's bad now. And no one would really realize that they've been herded into a world government situation. So
yeah, it's unfortunate, Mike. You know, that's why I think the work you've done, especially on our shows, like I said, I got to be honest, I didn't understand the depth of it a few years ago until I started working with you. You know, now I'm at a point where I'm sitting here looking at this. I'm like, look, it's ironic because I think more people would celebrate the arrest of Adam Schiff than what you're presenting here.
Yeah, right.
And it's not even comparable as to which is more important.
Oh, this was a nightmare. This was a nightmare they had in store for us. And Paris was their, because they've had these agreements every few years. They'll have some shindig. One year was in Rio, another year in Copenhagen, and they come out with these targets and verbal commitments. Paris was different. It was a treaty. And they even scammed it so you didn't need 2/3 of the Senate in order to pass the treaty. That's the trick they do these days. They do what's called fast track. Like, so the Senate will vote, and that's just a 50-50, 50+1, to give a president what's called fast track, so he could just do the treaty up or down. All right. It's just a dishonest, clever maneuver around the 2/3 requirement that's required by the Constitution, because they learned their lesson from 1919 when the League of Nations was shot down by the U.S. Senate with a minority of senators, but it was enough to thwart the 2/3 that they needed, you see. So they had it all. They lined it up. They teed it up for Obama, and now Hillary would have just come right in and say, well, we're under a treaty. Don't blame me, right? That was so dangerous, and it actually passed. And for that reason, it's no accident or coincidence that the very first act, well, there were two in Trump's first week. One, he killed the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, another backdoor mechanism for world government, link us up with Asian countries, and it had a backdoor to link up with the European Union. Trump wasted no time. He literally day one. And then day two, he pulls us out of Paris. So that tells you something about the prioritization of this matter and why it was so important. Trump went right to it. And then on the important judicial front, quote, the nation's top scientific body has removed the chapter on climate science from a reference manual for judges after an outcry from critics on the right. So again, that's another one of these things. You read it, and you're like, no big deal. Nobody's been arrested. No, they have now freed the judiciary. That's what they're doing, from being bound by all this tyrannical environmental bullshit. Understand? And I ask again, where would we be on the dangerously deadly issues of the climate Paris Accords, and the ever-worsening election fraud had the satanic witch Hillary and her looming legions of lunatic lesbian lawyers, how's that for alliteration, not been stopped from seizing the reins of executive, legislative, and judicial power in 2016 and then lording over us for 8 years. So this is the kind of stuff that we need to recharge our batteries with from time to time as we, await the ending of this extra inning baseball game that never ends. Don't get discouraged, because we would have been just these two things alone. And there's more, by the way. We did a show on this once. Don't forget about ESG investing.
Yep.
Right? Which all the corporations were put under the yoke of woke tyranny. That's gone. Right? We talked about how Pride Month all of a sudden is like dissipating because the corporations are no longer mandated. So there's a lot of overt stuff that you put your finger on that was very, very dangerous, and it's all been deactivated.
Yep. We've talked about it a lot here, and also, for people that may or may not watch our show on Sundays, every other Sunday, Breaking the System, with Eric Carlson and Patrick Gunnels, we've also been continuing the same thing there, Mike. We've been, in particular, the ESG DEI initiative. We've been using AI to kind of track which major companies are pulling it out, and on both fronts, they're all one by one pulling it out. Yeah, and I keep reminding people, yes, you're occasionally going to get the what do I call it? I call them reinforcement psyops, right? Like Sunday on Breaking the System, we covered Costco. Costco is still doing some woke stuff, right? Yeah, you're gonna get occasionally that one story, which I believe is put out there just to keep getting to that last group that's on the fence, or to keep a conversation going. But you can't let that one freak you out, because if you go and you look at the actual data, the data points to the whole thing falling apart.
That's right. And you're also going to have your lone wolf libtards, as I call them,
right?
Such as the character or the clique within Amazon that sabotaged my account. That's
exactly right.
It's not coming from Bezos or anything. That's no different than, say, an Amazon driver delivering something to my door, and he's a libtard and throws the box to break it or something.
Right.
It doesn't mean, so.
Right. So the guy throws the box. The guy throws the box and breaks it. Are you going to automatically assume your whole neighborhood, are all libtards because of the one guy? That's what I keep pointing out to people. Like, don't let the lone wolf stories. Don't let the emotions of a lone wolf story cause you to ignore actual data, right? Because we don't do that. We don't ignore data. It's the left that ignores data and numbers and truth, right? We don't do that.
And I would put ESG right up there with these two issues in terms of its danger. Because think about harnessing the power of corporate America. How many people work for one of these corporations? So they're getting propagandized in their emails and internal culture. And then you have the corporations putting their money and the muscle behind the cause, donating money, because that ties into the whole WEF. They would essentially get a report card. If a corporation demonstrates good, responsible, quote unquote, global citizenship, they get a higher rating, and it's good for their stock fund and so on. It's extortion. And a part of what constitutes that rating are many things, but one of them is the money that they donate to left-wing causes.
Yep.
Could be a BLM or something like that. So you're showing that you're a good libtarded corporation, and your place in certain funds with the BlackRock and the State Street is secured. So just think about the power, the monetary power, and the propaganda power of having every corporation in the country on the same page with all these issues.
Yep.
So that's gone too.
Yep. By the way, Mike, you'll get a kick out of this. I meant to send this to you on Sunday. I forgot. Speaking of reinforcement psyops, I mentioned Costco. Eric Carlson was highlighting in his Substack how it was very odd how all the companies are overwhelmingly voting to get rid of, like I said, DEI and ESG initiatives. And for some reason, Costco did a shareholder vote, not a board vote, like shareholders, like big group of people.
Yeah.
And they voted to keep, overwhelmingly, to keep their DEI initiatives. Guess what the percentage was? 98%. 98, 17.
Wow.
What are the chances that 98% of all shareholders voted to keep DEI? Virtually impossible to get 98% of people to vote anything. So that was yeah. So, again, that he was kind of speculating, is that this is one of these little reinforcement narratives that we're getting.
Well, I know Costco's pretty bad. What their CEO years ago, she openly said, we want more diversity, and says something about not white men or something like that. Possible it's an outlier, or it could also be used, to just show more people, because you get 1,000 of these little stories that, wake people up to a certain extent.
Yep.
But it's not all about just waking people up, though. It's just putting the ideas out there. Ultimately, there still will have to be major events.
Yep.
Which I think, and we'll touch upon that a little bit later on. But up till now, it's been a softening of the public, not so much an awakening.
Agreed.
Yeah, but the scary event, I believe, is in the works. And that's in my other piece.
Yeah.
But again, just to further highlight how important this is, I want to take you back to 1970. That was the original Earth Day. And here's Walter Cronkite of the Council on Foreign Relations, the most trusted man in America. The guy was a left-wing global commie, actually came out of the closet as such long after his retirement. There's a famous video of him accepting an award for global government. But he actually, all week long on CBS, there you see it, Earth Week, 1970. So this was a big event, perhaps not so much in terms of participation of the public, but in terms of media hype. This came out of nowhere. The environmental issue, they used to call it the ecology back then. So that alone, in and of itself, without knowing anything else, tells you is an important agenda item being pushed. If Uncle Walter's on it, that's all you need to know. So that's 1970. So that, 56 years ago.
Yep.
Okay, they're long-term players. Let's have a look at the headlines on the next page. Again, there's New York Times, paper of record. Millions join Earth Day observances across the nation. And this was all juiced up. They got the college kids. It's all the same crowd. One day they're going to a civil rights march. The next day it's a women's rights march. The next day, that's how it works. So it was not nearly as big as the hype entailed. It's just the usual libtard, fake grassroots type thing, right? But it was big. They were pushing it hard. The first Earth Day. Why? Because that was the idea, to use invented global crises as the pretext for more taxes, both on a national level and ultimately on an international level, more control over private enterprise, and ultimately more control over individuals. Putting meters on your house and tracking your mile. That was the agenda even back then. We got to save the planet by taxes, regulation, and diminishing national sovereignty. That was a big one. And that's 1970. Yeah.
And let's also just quickly acknowledge, since we're, this piece is what we call a reinforcement piece, a morale piece. We wouldn't be here in 2026 without the Biden years.
Yeah.
Because remember, what were we presented? What was the public presented with during the Biden years? An insane acceleration of green initiatives, right? Which is not the way the cabal does it. It's the frog in the pot. And what you saw when you got to Biden is, they basically turned every environmental issue into a giant neon sign. no more gas stoves, no more incandescent light bulbs, no, all the trucks have to be on and on. And they pushed and they did exactly what you would not do if you're trying to pull the wool over on the public. So that was, when they say warp speed, I to this day, I don't think we actually know what warp speed means. I mean, some people think it's just the Vax initiative. Some people think it's the entire Q operation, whatever it is. But warp speed was applied to everything. It was applied to the trans agenda and in particular the green agenda. And it was that softening of the public over those years that is allowing this to happen now without any real backlash whatsoever. Yeah. It would have been a different reaction 5 years ago, I think.
And a shout out to our girl, Q operative AOC, for putting the Green New Deal front and center. So, so that was 1970, and it's only 8 years later, 1978, that the global warming hoax was born. It's under the Carter administration. Had a whole commission set up, and that was the first report. They came back with this this so-called threat of the CO2, and then it became bigger in the 80s, and it just intensified year by year. And if you lived through those years, you just saw how it never went away, but it got bigger and bigger every year. But initially you have to overcome the skepticism. You had a whole generation of climatologists and meteorologists who were not on board, and all of a sudden they dropped this on the lap. So you have to kind of wait to filter them out. They cultivated a younger group of students, so they might have grown up on Captain Planet. They're 7, 8, 9 years old. Then they go through university and graduate school, and they're practicing. So they literally raised up an entire generation of scientists who really don't even understand that they were brainwashed as children.
Yep.
And then, of course, there's the corrupt one. In my book, I talk about the 3 C's when I describe the so-called scientists supporting the global warming hoax. There's cowardice, commies, and what was the other one? I mean, there's different categories because some of them actually believe it. Some of it know it's nonsense, but they go along with it. There's a lot of grant money to be made promoting this hoax. Okay, so but that's how it went. It just shows you they knew back then that this was going to take a generation or two. You believe it?
Yep.
So from 1970 to the Paris Climate Accords, which is their peak achievement, that was 2015, right? 45 years.
It's a long time.
Yeah.
It's a long time, and it's all being unwound. It's beautiful.
There she is. How dare you? She's done. And then there's the other issue. The Trump administration is making an intense push to identify and deport non-citizens who registered to vote, even if they did so inadvertently. An unusually aggressive approach that is helping to promote baseless claims that voter fraud is rampant. And there's the order right there. Executive Order 13848, imposing certain sanctions in the event of foreign interference in the United States election. And as you know, this was renewed by so-called Biden, as was the other executive order, which, in addition to the fact that you could tell just by looking at him that it was not the real Biden, that there's another indicator.
And that's something I was highlighting the other day. It's funny. There's a lot of people that are out there speculating, will Trump declare a national emergency for the election? He already has. We've been in one.
Yeah.
We've been in one. And at some point, I'm going to break it down. But I think people need to understand that we identified there are 54 national emergencies currently active, this being one of them. And those 54 national emergencies grant over 140 extraordinary powers to the executive branch by statute.
Yeah.
So some of the stuff Mike's writing about here, we're talking about with the voter rolls and things happening within the states, where, we get the pushback of, you guys are saying everything's fake and everything's under control. Well, I would encourage people to study some of these national emergencies and realize the power that the executive has when there is a national emergency. So there's a lot of stuff that just because the news isn't telling you that, the feds are in Michigan doing something doesn't mean they're not.
Yeah. And the language in these executive orders, 848 and 818, specifically says national emergencies in these areas specifically. The corruption, human rights abuses, that you're sex trafficking, and then this one here with the voter fraud. So it says specifically national emergency. A state of emergency, you know what that means? Like when there's a snowstorm here, the governor of New Jersey could declare an emergency and order all cars off the road. That's what emergency powers mean. I mean, it's restricted, of course, and it's temporary just to that specific issues. That's the kind of power he had. And also, take note of the title of the bill. It's not just election fraud. It's foreign interference. That's the key. And that covers a lot of territory because a lot of these operations, particularly with the machines, were based overseas. Okay. That also encompasses AIPAC, if you ask me, because AIPAC is an Israeli organization.
Oh, yeah.
And that's totally foreign interference in an election. And also the other executive order, corruption, I would also cover AIPAC. So be not alarmed about AIPAC giving all this money to candidates and Trump. Now that money's confiscated. It's not being given. But it's showing a lot of people how AIPAC controls our elections. They don't do it anymore. But again, this is part of the mimicry and the replay. But you can read these orders for yourself. Executive Order 13848 and 13818. You don't have to be a lawyer. Just look for the term emergency power. And also take note of the broad, almost vague language.
Yeah.
Look at it closely. It's essentially saying, okay, on these issues, I can do whatever the hell I want. And he's done so.
Yeah.
These stories
one little tidbit, like I said, when we get the pushback on, me speculating that maybe the white hats are meddling around at what's going on down in here in Florida or whatever. On January 6th, interesting date, January 6th of 2017, President Obama's Secretary of Homeland Security, Jay Johnson, designated election infrastructure as a subsector of the existing government facilities' critical infrastructure.
Yeah.
So right before Obama left office, they designated the machines as critical to national security.
Yeah.
So that elevated them to a new level. And again, go do a little bit of research. You could even get ChatGPT to admit this to you. Go start asking ChatGPT if there was a national emergency on elections, what the president might be able to do with those machines. You're going to find some very interesting answers. I'll just leave it at that.
Interesting. Well, that kind of also reminds me of a Q post in which Q said that when the Obama administration was putting forth a scheme to get the electors to change their vote, they squashed it. They said, don't do that, or we're going to make a move.
Mm-hmm.
It's essentially what the Q post said. Because you remember, there was all this talk about, the electors, they don't have to choose Trump. Right? And then all of a sudden it went away. Q tells us that they made it go away. So they essentially said to, the Obama gang, don't even try it because we can go kinetic. And they didn't want that. In retrospect, seeing that they lost, they probably would have went to kinetic warfare. So I think it was kind of it reminds me of the old policy that kept the United States and Soviet Union at peace. They called it MAD, mutually assured destruction.
Mm-hmm.
We could blow each other up, and that was what kept the peace. I think there was that sort of maneuvering between the white hats and the black hats. The black hats didn't want a shooting war because they could lose. And the white hats didn't want a shooting war either because it would have entailed a civil war that killed millions of Americans. You see?
Yep.
But if they would have blocked Trump with that scheme to tamper with the electors, they would have acted. And I think that's what made the black hats back off. So
it makes sense. It makes sense. I wanted, Mike. I always find this interesting because it's one of the reasons I enjoy doing this with you on Wednesdays, because I purposely don't spend a lot of time reading the New York Times because I work with you every Wednesday. I read all your emails throughout the week. But I always do find it not only interesting but reassuring when you're seeing the same patterns highlighted in the New York Times, the paper record, as I'm seeing clues of it being put out into the info space. To me, that shows you that it's not just a one-off thing. It's part of a larger pattern, right? So, for example, there was a number of things going around last week on X speaking about essentially the death of the climate agenda. And now I come on with you on Wednesday, and you're seeing the same thing in the paper record. So that shows, that again, there's your smoke screen, your signal of coordination. So this is one of the clips, for example, it's just evidence that not only is it happening, but it's being presented to the public in a way where they're going to start to go along with it. Because Mike, we've long talked about the effect that polling has on people. You have some people that are thought leaders in polls, and then the majority of people are just going to go along with the polls say. So when you have CNN reinforcing the fact that nobody cares about the climate, that's a major signal. Take a look at this.
They don't care.
Oop, sorry. Back that up to take this down. There we go.
They don't care. They don't care. I mean, just look at these numbers. Okay, top issue, a midterm vote. You can list up the 3 issues. The economy, not surprisingly, comes in at number 1 at 54%. Immigration, 28%. Look where climate change is. It's tied for 14th. Tied for 14th, all the way down here at 3%. Johnny, I'm not the greatest mathematician in the world, but I sure as heck know that 54% is a whole heck of a lot higher than 3%. So despite the climate being so warm in the month of July, the hottest month on record here in the United States of America, the voters simply put do not say that climate change is going to be an issue in which they vote upon in the midterm election.
And how much is it me, or is he is he getting a heavier New York accent when he does this sometimes?
Yeah. I noticed that too. He's like really laying it on lately. But that's exactly my point right there. Nobody cares. But you know how far we've come, because what I was mentioning earlier, what inspired me to write climate change, there was a hurricane that just happened. And I was so disgusted, right? Oh, one freaking hurricane, and all the experts are coming out. This could be climate change. Now we had a very hot summer, and he's pointing out nobody cares. So this is QAnon. There's no question about it. And to your point about, how do you notice that the New York Times is parallel to the things you're seeing in alternative media? There's a reason for that. It's still playing that role as the paper of record. That historically, that's why the paper was so important. Because historically, that's the way the game worked. Whatever the New York Times would report in the morning, you watch the news at 6 o'clock that night, and oftentimes, most of the time, that was the lead of what Uncle Walter would follow up with, and the rest of those clowns. So the New York Times was the trendsetter. But now that it's been taken over, it's totally the New York Times, I can assure you. They're still having it function in that role. So that enables me to keep my finger on the pulse of where they're going.
Yep.
And then you're further confirming that.
Yeah.
So,
well, and then 2 other quick data points before we move on. That I pulled. It's hilarious because I pulled these one last night, one this morning before I even saw what you're going to present.
Yeah.
And the same thing with the voter rolls. Donald Trump coming out yesterday. The Census Bureau has begun checking the voter records from the 2020 against the citizenship records on the first 128 million voters. The Census Bureau proves that over 24,000 non-citizens voted illegally. The Census Bureau is going to analyze the next 32 million voters, and this number will explode. I won the election. We must pass the Save America Act. Thank you for your attention to this matter. So he's talking about voter rolls. Again, a lot of stuff about voter rolls, again, which leads me to believe that despite what we're seeing on the news, that there's a federal presence in all these different places. And just this morning, you had the great Sheriff Dar Leaf, who I had the honor of meeting a couple years ago at one of the constitutional sheriffs conventions making an announcement regarding such out of Michigan. And there's a lot of this coming out right now, which again goes right in line with what Mike was highlighting in the New York Times.
Well, Tuesday morning here in Berry County, Michigan, I'm Sheriff Darleaf. An employee of the Michigan Secretary of State's office reported to me that non-citizens are automatically registered to vote when they change their address. A confidential informant provided evidence that the customer and automotive record system is programmed to congratulate and inform non-citizens that they are registered to vote.
Wow.
When the confidential informant provided proof to her supervisor that non-citizens are automatically registered to vote, the supervisor stated that the county clerk would identify the non-citizenship status. Unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, this is not true. The county clerk has given access to the qualified voter roll after the Secretary of State registers a person to vote. The qualified voter roll does not designate a citizenship status. Once a person is registered to vote, they have the ability to receive a mail-in ballot or vote at the poll with their ID card. The polls do not verify citizenship status. My office has referred this matter for investigation to the United States Department of Justice of conspiracy to violate 18 USC 611 and place non-citizens on the qualified voter roll and in the jury pool. Additionally, I am asking the Michigan legislature to use its resources to remedy the illegal voter registration and placement in the jury pool immediately. My office encourages witnesses with additional evidence of non-citizens receiving automatic voter registration to report this evidence to my office or to your local sheriff. You know this is wrong. It's time to act. Have a good day.
There it is. So just, more clues. Again, is that one thing going to wake up the whole world? No, but I'm just pointing out there's a lot of, that saying where there's smoke, there's fire. There's a lot of smoke right now. That you have all these different things popping their heads out of the rabbit holes, sowing doubt, identifying the problems. You got what I think are the necessary optics of the Congress having gone home and doing nothing about the problem. So as they're not here, we're just feeding the system with more of a mess, more breaking the law. And that's the setup for November.
Yeah.
So like Trump says, let's see what happens. But yeah, Mike, I love when that happens because it's the same thing we've been talking about on the roundtable on Joe's show, where we get a bunch of the anons together and, everyone kind of brings their own decodes. And it's just funny how lately we've all been seeing things pertaining to uranium one, which would be, obviously Iran, Hillary, Huma, the Muslim Brotherhood, which is coming back in the news. And we're all 5 or 6 of us are arriving at the same theme using all different decodes. So it's the same thing here. It's like when you have different people that research in different matters, in different avenues, coming up with the same trend and themes, there's something there. And that's exactly what I'm seeing here with that first piece. So it's a good one, Mike. Thank you. Let's keep rolling. QAnonians. That's a new one on me. QAnonians need not defend Trump from realnewsandhistory.com. What do you got on this one, Mike?
Well, the big story that nobody can miss now is that Trump is in free fall in terms of his popularity. Yeah, the MAGA base, by and large, is solid. But, these are the numbers in these polling outfits. They're all legit. They're all Control Q, and this is the New York Times. And, this is something you could confirm on your own if you want to do an informal focus group among, normie contacts and everything. But it's not looking good for Trump. By design, of course. But there's the chart now. His disapproval is close to 60, and his approval in some polls is in the low 30s. And of course, mainly it's due to the on again, off again war. Also the inflation, other factors, but still, it's the war that triggered it. It was unpopular from the get-go. Now we're at 6 months. It doesn't be any end in sight. And it's, it's not like a Vietnam type thing. You're going to see people out in the street, but the disgust is setting in with the $4 a gallon gasoline and what seems to be in perpetuity. But even more so, what I call the strategic buffoonery. I mean, one day it's like the golf is open. Oh, they're going to go open a golfer. I'm going to bomb them. Next day, we got a deal. I mean, this is deliberate. Couldn't possibly look worse.
No, you would just not say anything. You'd just sit there and not say anything. That's all.
Yeah.
Or you'd be vague about it.
Yeah. No, but I saw a lot of this is self-inflicted with his own words on top of the action, or the so-called action of this so-called war. But there's your headlines. New York Times, President Trump's approval rating. Financial Times, most U.S. voters say they are worse off under Trump. So now he's getting hit with the economic stuff. And, this is very alarming, of course, to many in our community, or at least on our side of the fence, not necessarily Anand's, because he's getting harder and harder to defend him. And he's our heroic leader. I've spent years defending him. And I don't mean in the context of the movie, but just stepping into the matrix and defending him, which was easy to do. You don't have to be an Anand to appreciate things like he made peace with Korea, he pacified the Middle East. Okay, he wants to end the war with Russia. So at least as a peacemaker, nobody could counter that argument. Okay, I mean, this Korean War, Cold War, existed for like 60 years, and he ended it. But now he's the warmonger in chief. How do you defend him? And my argument is, we don't have to defend him. I mean, we operate in two worlds, Dave. I mean, we've got. I like to make the analogy to the Matrix, where they operate in the real world, where the real robots are chasing them and everything, but then they step into the illusion world too. And amongst ourselves, we know that this is a movie. Trump is the hero of the show. But when operating in the Matrix, I think there's a better approach than continuing to defend him, because he doesn't really want us to defend him. That's right. What I think. Okay,
that's right.
So let's go a little deeper in here. Here's what the Q York Times says. Again, this is fully part of the Q operation. So when they're tearing down Trump, it's the Q operation tearing down Trump. It's Trump tearing down Trump. President Trump's approval rating has hovered around 38% in our average for months, though high-quality pollsters have recently found approval as low as 30%. In a recent CNN SSRS poll, 74% of Americans, including 43% of Republicans, said the war in Iran had not been worth the cost in terms of the financial burden or the American casualties. And I asked the question here again, how can we, who understand that this is a movie, possibly continue to defend our heroic president before the rightfully disillusioned who have no way of understanding the increasingly unrealistic seeming scenes of this wild film? The answer is don't defend him. You'll only look stupid and cultish if you even try to defend Trump at this point. What can you possibly say to somebody who's complaining about this war and the gas prices? Really? What are you going to say? Oh, there's weapons of mass destruction. I mean, really?
Yeah.
So it's really, and by the day, it's becoming harder and harder to defend. And now he's talking about bombing Oman. Did you hear that one?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So.
Yep.
And again, this is all self-inflicted. This is the Q operation. This is what's circulating out there. The script writers at White Hat Productions really do not want us to defend him anyway. And this is key. In due time, when the script calls for it, Trump will make his glorious comeback, either dead or alive. I mean, I don't know. They might script his assassination. Who knows? But this is temporary. Right? Remember the Q post? He will take all the slings for us, but even all that damage can be outdone.
Yep.
So don't feel bad, that you're being disloyal because you're not coming to defend. No, that'll take care of itself. So until that day arrives, the editorial board here at the Anti-New York Times has a better tactic in mind. And this is just This is the kind of stuff's coming out almost every day. That embarrassing story that they hit him in a food cart and they took him out of there, and then he lets the plane go without him. A plane that they thought might be blown out of the sky. How's that for loyalty to you? Very bad luck.
Yep.
Now he's coming out saying, I'm declaring the Strait of Hormuz as American territory. People laugh at stuff like this. And the Iranians are mocking him, but this is deliberately self-inflicted, and there's an important purpose to it, which I'm going to get into. And there's our Iranian Lego videos, which are White Hat Productions. There's our friend Harry, who is White Hat Productions, no doubt. And they're killing Trump. And Harry, breathless Harry, one night he's trashing Israel, another night he's trashing the Democrat Party, but now he's doing Trump. So it's like everybody's being destroyed. And I think it's in preparation for something better.
I do too.
But there it is. So we need not feel guilty or ashamed of being disloyal to Trump. Look what Trump is doing to himself deliberately, right? So I think the best course of action is I put together a little dialogue here, which I think people already having these kind of conversations or seeing it in others. So Norman Normie comes up to me and says, "Hey, Mike, what do you think about your boy Trump and his stupid war, eh?" The best response would be, "I'm as upset about it as you are. It just doesn't make sense because Trump was committed to ending all of these wars. But then he suddenly changed. If you ask me, the Israelis are extorting him over something." And to which, next page, Norman Normie will respond, I think in many cases, "You mean the Epstein files?" Yes, possibly. But more likely, Bibi may be threatening to set off a nuke in the United States somewhere. Blame it on Iran. It just seems like Bibi has this weird and inexplicable sort of influence over Trump, doesn't it? Norman Normie says, "Yeah, he sure does. You might be onto something." Well, Netanyahu is a real asshole. And I might close by saying, but I really like this Massey fellow. He's determined to stand up to Israel and expose the Epstein scandal. And Trump and Bibi really seem to hate him. What do you think of Massey and the third party movement that's brewing? I like Massey, but I think they'll destroy him. Now, let me tell you something. After I wrote this, okay, I had lunch with a local Q-tard who I befriended through this channel, okay? Shout out to Gail, hello. And she's telling me a story on her personal end. Someone very close to her, she found this so frustrating, she can't break through to him on Trump. And this individual is a Democrat voter, not a libtard though, but just like an old school Democrat, saying to her, Trump just listens to whatever Bibi tells him to do. And I said to her, that's perfect, he's saying that. What are you getting agitated for? Go along with it, okay? Because the public now, this is beyond our community and our echo chamber. I'm telling you, this is getting out there, this idea that Bibi's giving the orders to Trump. So that's why I say, don't defend Trump. Just go with it. You want to defend Trump, say maybe it's not his fault. Maybe Bibi's blackmailing him or something. I don't know. But I like the approach of Massey and Kent and Margie. I think that's the route that people should take when dealing with normies. The other alternative is try to convince them that we're watching a movie with actors and fake blood and fake wars and people running around in masks and AI. Good luck with that.
Yeah.
Now, you might be able to pick and choose an individual who you think might be a little open and ready to understand the world that we live in. But generally speaking, when you're in the matrix, that's not going to fly. So you don't want to defend Trump. You look like a fool. You may not necessarily want to go full Q-tard. They'll really think you're nuts. So why not just roll with it? It seems to me that that's what the White House wants us to do.
Yep.
Just say, yeah, it's that damn Bibi. It's not Trump, it's Bibi. Fine. I don't think you'll get much pushback on that from anybody, left, right, or center.
Well, it's funny, Mike, because I think I told you the story last week, but just to remind you, I had a woman I know sat down next to me the other day, and I'm encouraged by two things. Number one, she is starting to dive. She's in her 80s, and she's starting to dive down rabbit holes on her own of stuff that I know is out there to prep. Like the other day, she was looking into the AI data centers, and she's saying how she's reading that all the water they're hogging, which by the way they're not, is being used for doomsday bunkers. And I said, no, that's not a thing. You know, that would have been. But I almost had the similar conversation with her, although I think I told you, she came to me, she's like, I'm hearing this crazy crap that there's going to be a nuke attack and Hegseth and the Pentagon's going to do it, so we stay in the war with Iran. And I said, maybe not that way. I go, but does that make sense to you? She goes, no. I go, all right, but who do you think would actually do that? She goes, she looks around, she goes, Israel. I was like, that would make more sense. That would make more sense. Yep.
So, if you want to be a good digital warrior, I mean, up until now, my attitude was defend Trump at all costs. But I think what they want us to do is not defend him. So, and go this route. It's perfect. Now, look at this nonsense. You tell me this is not deliberate. Trump puts out a tweet. Truth. The number one goal is and always will be, Iran cannot have in any way, shape, or form a nuclear weapon. Really now at WMDs? So this is what I mean. You can't defend this. They don't want you to defend it. I believe this is what the White House, well, we know that this is what they're promoting. So why not go along with it? Look at that series of images below. The first two are from the Iranian Lego videos. They're not Iranian, they're White Hat Productions. Here's Bibi showing Trump a folder. Trump looks very scared. And then you see the contents, the Epstein files. Trump is in the Epstein files. And then on the final image there, the new movement, and you're hearing more and more buzz about this every day. And this will intensify as the situation continues to brew in the Middle East. And maybe after the new year, when the new presidential election cycle begins, 2-year cycle. But there they are, Margie, Tucker, Massey, Joe Kent. This thing is growing. The images depicted above obviously constitute the storyline which White Hat Productions has scripted. So why not just go along with it? So now, if everyone sees the Democrats as these insane communists, and they see Trump and the Republicans as beholden to Bibi, where are you going to go? So I think this movement, and I don't know if there's going to be a presidential, I don't know if it goes to 28 or not. Doesn't matter. It's the movement and the voice itself. This thing could really intensify, especially if they start talking about prolonging the war and the ground. There really seems to be no end in sight. There's only a selective service for the draft that's coming.
Mm-hmm. There's no proof that there's an actual war happening, but there's no end in sight.
That's right. There's no end in sight. And then, we talked about the war gaming of the draft, and then the actual selective service goes into effect in December. So, but that's the kind of stuff ultimately is going to happen. You're going to have to be a fake false flag, a draft, hysteria. That's what's going to get you to the climax. I don't know when that is, but certainly all of this is in line with that scenario of people saying, what the hell's going on? What's up with Israel? What's up with Epstein? Like that clip we saw in the Lego videos where they show ultimately people marching in the streets all across America demanding the Epstein files, right? So maybe that's where they're going. But
and look, I'm sure there's people watching that, this every time we talk about this, a lot of people get upset. They don't like the notion of Trump losing support because, again, they have those people around them that they have to deal with. But you got to realize, we're talking about right now a 6-month period out of what is at minimum already, let's call it an 11-year war, because you can make the argument it really started in 2015 when he came down the escalator, largely before then. But let's just say 2015. You're talking about an 6 months out of 11 years? What the hell is that? That's nothing.
Yeah.
That's a blip on the radar. And that's exactly how they're going to look at it. They don't care.
Yeah.
You'd also have to believe that Donald Trump ran that mission back in just over a year ago in June of 2025. Supposedly bombed the nuke site in Iran, somehow figured it out 5 minutes after it happened that something that's 300 feet under the ground was gone. I don't know how that happened, but anyway, somehow figured that out. Then proceeded to take a victory lap, honor the people, have the military parade, and for the next 6-7 months telling every speech how he ended 8 wars. And he did all that not knowing this was going to happen.
Yeah.
Like, he isn't that dumb. I wouldn't do that. Mike wouldn't do that. So then by default, the only other answer is that he did know. And in any way, in some ways, what he did in 25 made the optics of what's happening now worse. So why would he purposely make it worse? Well, I think Mike just explained it to you.
Yeah.
You know what, Mike, just real quick before we get to the last story, I always like to back up our theories, right? Because again, you can back up in many ways the theories of what's being put out in the world by looking at who is discussing them and when. So obviously you say to yourself, why would, we know the answer, but I'm speaking rhetorically. Why would Trump allow the mass population to believe at this period in time that Bibi Netanyahu is pulling his strings? Well, that's because that is how it's been for every other president preceding him since the forming of the state, right? So where can we look for clues that this narrative is reaching the mass populace? Well, for one, we've talked about the 67-point swing in the downside of the support of the state of Israel, right? That's a huge clue right there. But a second clue is who's talking about it now, and who's talking about things we were talking about in some cases 6, 7, 8 years ago. Theo Vaughn, who has one of the largest podcasts in the country, tens of millions of followers, bigger than any mainstream media outlet, right? They, the other day, just decided that they were going to discover the Wesley Clark video explaining how our State Department and our Pentagon, at the behest of who? Decided they were going to attack all these different Middle East nations in 2003. And listen to them talking about it. This is the kind of stuff this to me is indicative, because I'll stop after this. I know I'm getting off on a tangent here. A podcast like Theo Vaughn that has 5, 10, 15 million viewers, like whether people want to say that's mainstream or not, in 2026 it is, because it's bigger than any news agency. So take a quick listen to this just to back up what Mike's saying.
40 and under, that's your new ABC CBS, the collectively.
1,000%. Yep.
We tend to have a boomer mentality sometimes and think, wow, who's Theo Vaughn? Well, you put all these guys together, Vaughn and Rogan and the Twitter. That's the future.
Exactly what you want, Mike.
Yeah.
That's exactly what you want.
That message is getting out there. And the longer this goes on, the more that message will spread. And my God, if they really go to a draft, let's see what happens.
Let's see what happens.
Slowly but surely, or if there's a big boom one way or another, it just seems to me that we're approaching a universal awareness. We've already got the universal awareness that Netanyahu and the Israelis are insane. Okay. Now that there is developing into the fact that they control Trump. You see, and once you have that, it just opens up a whole new world, But boy, I was writing about the right after the 9/11. I knew about the clean break. Douglas Feith, Paul Wolfowitz, Richard Pearl. These were all the By the way, those are all neocons who ran that policy. And they've been driven out of the Republican Party by Trump. So that you could add that to the list of things that were done overtly. Everybody knows that the neocons hated Trump. In fact, a lot of them jumped ship and endorsed Hillary. So that they showed their cards. They're finished. There is no neocons in the Republican Party. Again, they're play acting it. Trump is talking like one with his WMDs, So this is just beautiful. It's really a live action re-education in the American public. Okay,
Yep.
on matters that I've been writing for the longest time. Yeah,
And it's exactly what Trump is pointing to in this truth he put up yesterday. Put up a truth of Lindsey Graham having fun just a few weeks ago. Check out the hat. Well, what does the hat say? It says, "Make Iran great again." And Mike, would you believe he's talking about making Iran great again at 9:16 in the morning?
there you go.
Drop 9:16. We are saving Israel for last. Very specific reason, not mention a single time. And that's exactly what we're living through right now, in my humble opinion.
No doubt.
All right. Well, before we jump over to our historical piece that we always wrap up with, again, as you guys know, with Mike being deplatformed from the Jungle website, as we call it, your support of his work is more important now than ever. And again, over the last 2 years, I can't say enough about this community. I know I speak on behalf of Mike when I say how thankful we are the support you continue to give him. So if you would, Mike, let's take a minute, as we always do, and let everybody know how they can get to your work, especially with all the new people coming in. Let everyone know about realnewsandhistory.com.
Okay, realnewsandhistory.com, because fake history is the fake news that has passed into the rearview mirror. And, the reason I was able to come up the Q learning curve so quickly and interpret and decode so efficiently is because I knew the history of this cabal and how they operate. And it's interesting because now all of the tactics are being reversed, all the psychological tactics. So yeah, they're manipulating and playing psychological games for a good cause, a higher cause. But historically, it was always done for a bad cause. And that's what I do. I fuse together the history and the news. The more you know about history, the more it enhances your understanding of the current world. So have a look at the website, kick the tires around, very user-friendly. What you really want to take advantage of, though, is that PDF package right there, the Mike King University. For just $29, you get all 36 of my books and booklets in PDF format. And that covers a lot of territory, whether it's the climate change hoax or World War II and World War I and this one here, 9/11. You get it all for just $29. If you prefer physical books, although I was removed from Amazon, you still get the physical books at the books and PDF section. You would just go through the menu, you pick out the books you want, you submit the inquiry form at the bottom of the page, and then you'll receive an invoice. You still can get the physical books if you want physical format. And what I suggest you pick up, 25th anniversary is coming up, so it'll be like a big event. People get interested. Crash Course Inside Job. This is a 1-hour read. And I tell you, the feedback I've gotten from people with this who've shown this to like normies, it really strikes them hard and makes them think. And especially now with Israel and Netanyahu, in the toilet in terms of popularity, because they feature heavily in this. So you can grab a bunch of these. You go to the books and PDF section. You say how many you want. I'll send you an invoice. And what else? And then the other element here of what I do is the Rumble page. And you can access my playlist right from the front page here. And please follow me on Rumble. This way you'll get an email alert every time I put out a new video. I probably do one like every other day, typically 15 to 20 minutes. So follow me on Rumble at Mike King there. Appreciate that. And in particular, if you're new to this or intermediate, or even if you're really experienced in it, I think you'll appreciate the series that I did, the Q operation, Q posts analysis. I went through all 5,000 posts, broke them up into 24 episodes of about an hour apiece, and you go through them systematically. I explain them. I show pictures. I don't cover every single post, of course, just the essentials. But the more you go back and read the stuff, the more you, and then look at where we are today, you understand how we got here. Right? the operation, it's not only 100% real and legitimate, it's clear that they've won. And all we're seeing now is replay of the movie for strategic purposes. So as the playlist there, the other playlist you want to have a look at is the rise and fall of the NWO series. That one is like 40 parts. And I cover like 300 years of history. And believe me, if you ever thought history was like boring, uninteresting, you won't when you go through this. Because I'm showing you the common thread linking all the great events of history that you may have heard about, but you don't understand where they fit in the puzzle. The cabal engineered everything. Everything. This is a generational cabal with Satanists at the pinnacle and using groups like the Freemasons and then setting up the communists, etc. And you just see, I break it down decade by decade by decade for like 300 years. And you get to the modern day. And you'll be so enlightened and you'll have a proper sense of not only how we got to the precipice, but how we unwound it with this amazing Q operation. So that's my Rumble. Again, please follow me on Rumble. The more views and the more followers I get, the more visibility I gain. And I'm giving a lot more attention to this now. I'm doing everything I can to offset the lost visibility from the Amazon ban. So your support is one area to help me. Buy my books, PDFs, buy me a coffee link. But also, just as important, help me grow on Rumble, share my videos. Because it really is a unique niche. I don't think anyone's really fusing together the news with the history in a single package. But it should be, because again, fake history is just the fake news passed into the rearview mirror. And believe me, fake news is not a phenomenon that just began in recent times, like with 9/11 or something. No, they were lying back in the 40s and the 30s and the 20s. Right around the turn of the century, the problem really got bad. So yes, follow me on Rumble. I've got also buy me a coffee link on the page below. If you enjoy my work and my videos from time to time, buy me a cup of coffee. There's even a little box you could check, support monthly. And that helps the site grow as well, because I do purchase advertising with some of the revenue that goes in. So I really think it's important to expand this message, because the historical illiteracy in this country is just, it's horrifying. And even people who think they know history, what they know is fake history. So people either know fake history or they don't know any history at all. And believe me, when you start to learn this stuff, you'll see, I like to make a comparison to somebody who has Alzheimer's and he's wandering around a crowded football stadium. He's got no clue where he is or where he's going. And that's what it's like when you don't understand the basics of history, particularly in the last 100, 200 years. But there's a reason like you don't understand. It's because it's part of pulling the wool over your eyes. If you don't know history, you don't know precedents. If you don't know precedents, it's very difficult to interpret what's going on in the current times. So this is important. So that's my story, and thanks again for watching and your support.
As always, if you're watching on pill.net or on Rumble, you will find a link below to realnewsandhistory.com. You'll also find a link to Mike's Rumble channel. Please go over there and give him a follow. Let's get him over that 30,000 mark. And of course, you'll also find a link to his X and to his Buy Me a Coffee, should you choose to support the work. And again, thank you guys all, as always.
America is discovering what you already know. Nothing we do is to seek accolades. But lately, the recognition keeps rolling in, award after award. America's consumers are confirming what 17switch.com members have known all along. USA Today recently placed 17switch.com on its list of the top 500 most trusted brands and also the top 500 of America's best stores. Forbes and U.S. News and World Report recently named 17switch.com one of the best employers in America, and Time recently named 17switch.com as one of America's best private companies. In each case, these media companies hired a reputable national research firm to determine the results. 17switch.com is being discovered. Here's a list of recent national awards by national media. What if you could avoid the corporate-owned grocery stores, pharmacies, and big-box retailers and in doing so, support American manufacturing, American jobs, and the parallel economy? What if you could shop where consumers don't have to choose between effectiveness and safer ingredients? The answer is you can, and it's far more convenient and affordable than you think. Please, take a moment to visit 17switch.com. Get the information, get empowered, learn how their offering of over 500 products will make your home a cleaner, safer, and healthier place. It's simple, it's quick, and it will help us break away from the big box conglomerates and start putting our dollars somewhere better.
And before we jump into the last story, another great way you can help get more exposure to Mike King's work is to simply hit that positive affirmation button wherever you guys are watching this evening. That is the heart button on X, the red pill over on pill.net, and of course on Rumble. Hit the thumbs up button, leave a comment. Also consider using that repost button right next to the thumbs up, thumbs down. All those things help the algorithm a great deal, and we thank you guys for that. So let's wrap up as we always do with a little bit of a historical perspective that you're so well known for from realnewsandhistory.com. What do you got on this one, Mike?
All right. Well, I titled this piece 250,000 Americans died for the Bolsheviks. There's about 425,000 Americans died during World War II. About 250,000 of those were in Europe. Okay, because in Europe there was more land fighting, whereas the war against Japan was to a large extent at sea and in air. People get killed that way too, of course. But on land, the so-called boots on the ground, that's where the real meat grinder is. Okay. That's a lot of dead American boys. And then, of course, you got the ones who are injured, maimed, psychological issues coming back. Horrific price paid, mainly in Europe. And they died for the Bolsheviks. And I've written about this. I've known this for years because the war strategy was engineered in such a way as to preserve Eastern Europe for the Bolsheviks, for Joe Stalin. What's interesting about this piece, which I just stumbled across, I'll do this from time to time. I'll go back into the old archives of the New York Times, and I'm not particularly looking for anything, just kind of reading the headlines, see if anything strikes me. And there's so many so many gems in there, so many bits of diamonds. But here's one, which pretty much, I learned some new stuff, but it pretty much confirms what I already know. But I love pulling this stuff out because it's quote unquote the paper of record. It's mainstream. It's not coming from crazy conspiracy theorist or revisionist, right? So this here, right from the New York Times, this is one of those things that kind of they put in there, and then with the passage of history, they don't talk about it anymore. But that's a fact. 250,000 Americans, nobody told them that they're dying so we could appease Joe Stalin and the Bolsheviks. And this is the story, appeared October 14, 1945. The war in Europe ended. VE Day was May 8th, 1945. And then VJ Day, Victory over Japan, that was in August. So this is 2 months after the war has ended totally. And we get this story. Heinrich Himmler fumbles at conditional surrender. So he's dead by now. He was the head of the elite SS units. And towards the end of the war, the final weeks, he's trying to negotiate a surrender terms on his own. He's one of the top-ranking men with the Americans and the British. And it didn't end so well. They ended up, they say he killed himself in captivity. David Irving thinks the British killed him because he knew too much things. They didn't even want him talking at Nuremberg. But who knows? But he dies after going to captivity. But at the end, towards the end of the war, he tried to negotiate a surrender. And we're going to talk about that so you'll understand what I mean when I say 250,000 Americans died for Stalin. There's a German propaganda poster, and this is how the Germans viewed their effort, and a lot of Europeans viewed their war against the Soviet Union. Germany is standing up against the Soviet beast in the East. Now, mind you, From the takeover of Russia in 1918 by the communists all the way up until this point, the number of people murdered, tortured, disappeared in the gulags, I mean, who knows? It's in the tens of millions. There's estimates as high as 50, but who knows? But it was horrific because they had to eliminate anybody who had any remnant of loyalty to the old regime and the old monarchy, and they killed the priests and nuns and blew up. Horrific. Okay, that's the story of the Bolshevik takeover of the Soviet Union. It was so bad, the United States didn't even recognize the Soviet Union until 1933. It was considered like a criminal state. But that was one of FDR's first orders of business. So this is how, the Germans viewed themselves as the protector of all Western civilization in fighting against the Bolsheviks. So it's important to understand just how brutal and mass murderous Stalin and Lenin and Trotsky and that whole bunch were. Okay. So now here's a map of Europe. In red, you see the countries under German occupation. And these occupations were necessitated by the fact that they had to keep the British and the Soviets out. And in the blue there, you see the Soviet Union. So that's the situation. But they were fighting against what they knew would be a brutal totalitarian genocide if the Soviets ever made it into Europe. So that's a very important context to understand. Yeah, so there's the numbers I talked about. 420,000 dead Americans, 250 in Europe alone. Now, of course, none of these men had to die at all because the war was not necessary. It was imposed upon Germany and Japan. But be that as it may, let us say, for the sake of argument, that you had to take out Germany and the big bad Hitler. It was necessary. Let us say, for the sake of argument, he was this monster that they said. Okay, be that as it may, you still didn't have to lose 250,000 men in Europe. And I'm going to explain why. Well, there's Himmler, by the way, in Happier Days meeting with Hitler. And the article is about Himmler in the last days of the war trying to make a deal with the Western powers because they felt that they would get a better deal, that they could, maybe escape being genocided. All right, obviously. Hitler knew better. And indeed, although in the long run, East Germany, which came under communist influence in Eastern Europe, they were far worse off than Western Europe developed much more economically and they had more freedom. But in the short run, in the immediate aftermath of the war, the Germans got it just as bad in the West from the Allies as the Germans in the East did. There was genocide. Eisenhower murdered 1.5 million German POWs, left them out deliberately to be exposed. And there were rapes and there was looting. Himmler and many others were deluded in thinking, oh, they'll treat us right. Let's just make a deal. Well, we'll surrender, but we'll keep fighting the Soviets in the East. That was his thinking. So now I'm going to quote to you from the article here. New York Times, this is very, very useful. 'Twas perfectly clear from Pearl Harbor on that the German generals would try to quit whenever the time came that going on with the war would cause even worse consequences to the Reich than quitting would cause. So it's saying, even from Pearl Harbor, which is December 1941, American policymakers already knew that there's going to be German generals who are making the calculation, oh shit, the United States is entering the war. We got Britain in the war. We're fighting the Soviets in the East. There's no way in the long run we can win. We got to make some kind of... So they knew that there were many German generals thinking along those lines. Apart from that, there were a number of German generals, people in high command. They were like old aristocratic types. They didn't really like Hitler. They really despised the idea that this guy was basically a homeless artist at one point. Then he's a corporal in the military, gets a few awards for valor. Now he's the commander. They don't like that. They're aristocratic. They don't like the meritocracy system. So there were opportunities here, both because of that ideological and also because they knew that many German generals were going to make that calculation that we can't win in the long run, that they could make a deal with the Germans, but there was no interest in doing so. They could have saved all those lives, but they never exploited that opportunity, which they knew existed even before American troops were deployed there. It was also perfectly clear that when the time came, the generals would approach the Western allies with a proposal to surrender to them, but not to the Russians, the Soviets. America's high political war strategy was based on that calculation that this would happen. So they knew it all along, that they would have this opportunity to just accept a surrender. Not only did the generals do exactly as they've been expected to do, but even Himmler did exactly the same thing too. Now, Himmler did it at the very end of the war, in the final weeks. These generals, they would have been open to doing it in 1941, just surrendering their armies, and then the whole system would have collapsed. So why didn't they do that? Why didn't the United States make an effort early on, 41, 42, reach out to these generals? Say, listen, you can't win in the long run. Save your country. Just lay down your, and they would have done it, but they never did. Why? Next line. The offer was not acceptable. As had been foreseen, it was an offer to surrender in the West, but not in the East. So all of these German generals who would have laid down their arms to surrender to the United States said, oh, no way. We're not surrendering to the Russians too in the East. That's not happening. And that was the sticking point. Nothing else would be considered. Next line. The Soviets and the British were, of course, kept informed of all of this. So German generals want to surrender, and we're saying no, not unless you surrender to the Soviets too. And then we're ratting into Joe Stalin. They want to surrender, but don't worry, we're a team. We're going to surrender. So it's telling you right there, early on, they could have ended this war, because without your generals, I mean, the whole Western Front would have collapsed.
Yep.
Boy, you talk about treason right there. Now we're gonna keep the war going, even though you want to surrender, even though our boys haven't been killed yet. You've got to surrender to the Soviets in the East. Can't just surrender to us. Think about it. Again, I knew this, but it's so nice to see this in the establishment form, because the people who worship the New York Times can't deny it now. Casablanca Conference, January 1943. Let's go to that. This was held in Morocco, and Churchill and Roosevelt and the traitorous French generals who would later join them, they had escaped France. They agreed that surrender must be unconditional. Okay. So right there, the German generals had no shot, because they're telling them, no, you don't make conditions that you're going to exclude the Soviets. It's unconditional. So that was an important, it was really a horrible decision with Japan too, because Germany and Japan, they fought even much harder. Who wants to surrender unconditionally? That's unheard of. Unconditional surrender means lay down your guns, shut up, be quiet. We're coming in, and we're going to restructure your whole country as we want it. So that was decided at the Casablanca Conference. Then there was the Tehran Conference held in Iran later that year, November, December 1943. Let's go to the next page. And actually, I sent you a video. If you could just play the excerpt. So another one of those corny newsreels, but I stipulated the times that I want you to play. Let's have a look what was going on at the Tehran Conference.
All right, here we go.
Wings over the mountains by Baghdad and the Dead Sea. 3 planes from the supreme headquarters of Britain, the United States, and the USSR bring to the capital of Persia the leaders of the war against Germany. This is for the three-way conference so long expected, so often postponed. For the few days, Tehran becomes the center and focus of the world. Soon after the war began, British and Red Army soldiers joined hands here in Iran. It was the only land communication we had. It was fitting that this first meeting of Churchill, Roosevelt, and Stalin should be here. The embassies and legations used for the meetings were closely guarded. The German intelligence service had guessed that the meeting was taking place. How much importance Hitler attaches to the meeting may be judged from the fact that he is at such pains to point out that it is not important. The growth of Allied strength and the confidence we have in the future may also be judged from the outstanding fact that Hitler's meetings no longer worry us. You will recognize many familiar figures on this great world stage. Anthony Eden, with him Sir Alexander Cadogan, Permanent Chief of the Foreign Office, and Sir Archibald Clark Carr, British Ambassador to the Soviet Union. This is Marshal Voroshilov, Soviet Commissar for Defense. At the Soviet Embassy on the 4th day, a special ceremony was planned. It was not concerned with the future, but with the glorious past. Mr. Churchill was to present to Marshal Stalin the Stalingrad sword, the gift from our king on behalf of all the peoples of the British Empire to the heroic defenders of the great steel city in southern Russia. Acknowledgement of the most gallant and most desperate stand in all this war, the victory snatched defeat which turned the tide of fortune against the German invaders. Behind the sword bearer, who unfortunately obscures the camera's view, you may see how Stalin kissed the sword of honor.
Boy, they really puffing up Joe Stalin, weren't they?
Yeah, I'd say so.
Now, even again, for sake of argument, let's say Hitler did all those horrible things they say he did, and you take it at face value. Still, he would be a choir boy in comparison to Stalin and that whole bunch and the genocide they committed. And the whole world knew about it. It's only with the outbreak of the war comes out, Stalin's a hero. But that is one of the great mass killers of all time. It's right up there with Genghis Khan, a monster. And there they are at Tehran, and they're glorifying him. That's the British newsreels. In the United States, the press refer to him as Uncle Joe. So what's going on here? If the war was to fight a very bad man and tyranny and genocide, why are you chummying up with someone who, even if you believe Hitler did all those things, is still 100 times worse?
Still did worse. Yeah.
And if you read I guess the original manifesto of the Communist International in 1918, it specifically says all governments are targets of communist takeovers. He's the declared enemy of the West. What's going on here? But there they are at Tehran. There's a Russian postage stamp commemorating the Tehran conference at the Big Three. And one of the big takeaways, the agreements made at this conference was no separate peace deals with Germany. So you've got all of these German generals. They see the writing on the wall. They'll surrender. Regardless of what Hitler wants to do, they'll surrender. But we're not going to surrender to the Soviets in the East. Hell no. And they were told, nope. By Churchill and Roosevelt and General Eisenhower, nope, no deals. You got to surrender to the Soviets as well. We're a team. It's crazy. And then the article continues The generals' reaction, the German generals, was exactly the reaction that had been counted upon. It was the attempt on July 20, 1944, to assassinate Hitler and seize power. So these generals, some of them old aristocratic types, maybe they thought they could get a new Kaiser or something. A lot of them out there saved their ass, and maybe some of them just genuine patriots who felt were naive, that we'll get a good deal from the Allies. They would never have anticipated that 1.5 million of their men would be deliberately starved and murdered of neglect by Eisenhower. But that's what they were thinking. And so they even went so far as to plot the assassination of Hitler. But this movement never really took off because it was never given any assistance or encouragement by the United States or Britain. They were playing a hard line, unconditional surrender, and that includes surrendering to the Soviets. So that is what I mean. And obvious, 250,000 men didn't have to die. The whole Western Front might have collapsed from the get-go. And indeed, even after the invasion of Normandy, there are many cases, and I review them in my book, The Bad War, where there were these openings that would just develop in the German lines. And the establishment historians, they say, well, Eisenhower, he was cautious. He didn't know, blah, blah. They make excuses for the fact that he did not exploit these openings. So they were leaving openings on their own, some of these generals, because they wanted it's not that they wanted the Germany to lose, but they made the calculation in the long run, we're going to lose anyway. Let's lose to the Americans, the British. We're not going to get genocided that way. So they were actually leaving openings. There's a whole story there. And Eisenhower again and again refused to exploit those openings because it was agreed the Bolsheviks were going to take Eastern Europe. So how many American men died?
It's terrible.
Yeah.
Terrible.
Then it continues. Heinrich Himmler, the man who hanged the authors of the July 20 assassination attempt, was reduced less than 7 months later to making almost exactly the same approach to the Western allies that his victims had made and to perish indirectly in the attempt. Of course, by the time Himmler's trying to make a deal, war's really almost already over. But what he proposed is we'll surrender. Let us keep fighting. We'll move all those troops in the Western Front and we'll fight the Soviets for you because they're your enemies as well. No. So that was turned down. And had that happen, if all the German might was turned eastward and you had, say, the tactical support of the Americans and the British, you could have toppled Stalin at that time easily. But they didn't want that.
They didn't want that.
We're thinking ahead. We need our Cold War.
Yeah, of course. Couldn't have that.
Yeah. So how fucked up is that? And it talks about a booklet that was written. It's called The Curtain Falls, is the story of this last desperate attempt by Himmler, told by the man that Himmler asked to act as an intermediary in the Western Allies. He was a Swedish count, Count Folke Bernadotte. And that's who Himmler was trying to go through as an intermediary. Sweden was neutral. And could you set me up a meeting with Eisenhower? I got a plan. We'll surrender and we'll just keep fighting the Soviets in the East. Eisenhower would hear none of that. No. So for all of its brevity, the book is remarkable for the insight it gives into the positively preposterous parallel between Himmler's machinations and those of the men he had butchered after July 20th. So that's what he's saying. These offers were ridiculous and they were never even considered. They were rejected out of hand right from the beginning. So we kept fighting and fighting and fighting. And you had all of these generals who would have surrendered.
Incredible.
It really is. I've got to get a hold of this booklet now. The Curtain Falls, a unique eyewitness story of the last days of the German Reich. But we learned from that article something interesting. It confirms that American policymakers anticipated such a development as early as Pearl Harbor.
Yep.
Okay.
They planned for it. They planned for it.
You imagine like you're a soldier who's been killed or your buddies have been killed. And you're learning after the fact, oh, You mean the Germans would have surrendered to us? They just wanted not to surrender to the Soviets, right?
Yep.
You made us die for nothing? Yeah. But it's interesting, in the subsequent years and decades, this little fact has just kind of been erased. I mean, Himmler we know about, but the idea that it went back to the very beginning, that this war could have basically ended before it started. And again, we're assuming for the sake of argument that Hitler had to go. He was a monster. Okay. Even if you accept that, why didn't you just have the German generals surrender? Himmler still wanted to make conditions for a German surrender. He was willing to surrender to the Western Allies, but not to Russia. Moreover, neither Denmark nor Norway should be occupied by Russian troops. And this madman apparently seriously believed that General Eisenhower would receive him to discuss such terms. I read that already, I think. Yeah. Yeah, so there it is. They tried to surrender only in the West. And, you know, those generals who did surrender their armies while the war was still going on in the West, because that was happening too in large numbers in the final year of the war. That was the calculation they made. It's lost. Let's surrender to the West. And, you know, at least we're not surrendering to Stalin. Little did they know 1.5 million of their men would be murdered by Eisenhower. So let's have a look at, in the next panel, there's another headline from another New York Times story. Pattern of the Reich's end. Surrender in the West with resistance in the East appears to be the German plan. So, you know, as the war is unfolding, this is, you know, it's kind of known, it's not censored, but it's just interesting how history developed. They erase all this because you can't have students of history going back and figuring out that all of these generals would have surrendered as early as 42.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can only imagine how much stuff they removed.
Yeah. So here's just a few bullet points of Eisenhower's illustrious resume. I wrote a whole book on him. I don't like Ike. Horrible general, horrible president. But as far as Supreme Allied Commander, World War II, there's just a few of these so-called blunders he made. He sidelined General George Patton in Italy after a slapping incident. The Germans at first thought that this was some kind of psyop. They're like, there's no way you're taking your best general, the legendary Patton, and you're going to put him on the sidelines because he slapped us. He was in the hospital, and there was a soldier there saying his nerves were bad. All these other guys are missing arms, and he slapped them with his gloves. That was just a pretext because Patton was like, go, 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 go. He had to rein him in.
Yep.
Because Eastern Europe has already been agreed upon as going to Stalin. Then later on, he had to bring Stalin back when the Germans started pushing back. And then when Stalin again, he's going too fast. He cut off his gas. Actually cut off Patton's gasoline. Patton was livid, and he wrote about it in letters to his wife. He says, I could have took Berlin. They cut off my gas. And he was unstoppable. The Third Army was rolling, partially because of the aggressive tactics of Patton, but also because a lot of these German generals were like, let him go. Let him go. we want to be under U.S. occupation, not the Soviets. You understand? Eisenhower failed to exploit numerous openings left for him by German generals. He ordered, and then towards the end of the war, he gave a halt order. The Third Army to stop at the Elbe River. Berlin was right there. The Americans got to Berlin before the Soviets did, but they were told to stop. So the Soviets could have it. And again, it would have been like minimal to no resistance to the Americans. Everybody wanted to surrender to the Americans. He refused to meet Himmler. Himmler wanted to keep fighting the Soviets. Okay. Couldn't have that because we needed our Cold War. And then probably was party to the murder of Patton along with the SSI. Wasn't that convenient? Patton's he's about to come home and he has a fender bender. And then they finish him off in the hospital.
Couldn't have him talking.
Yeah. Then at the end of 1944, because Eisenhower, FDR, they refused to even consider these German offers, there was a regrouping. The Germans regrouped and they made a bulge in the American lines. So this is called the Battle of the Bulge. So the Germans made a regrouping and they're going to try and push the Allies back towards the English Channel. And this is when Eisenhower calls up Patton again to pull his chestnuts out of the fire. So when he needed them, he would take them off the sidelines. But just at this battle alone, killed Americans 19,000 to 19,200. Wounded 47,500. Captured or missing 20,000 to 23,000. All of this completely unnecessary. The Germans are, please, we want to surrender, but not to the Soviets.
Yeah, Mike, Battle of the Bulge, I shouldn't be sitting here today. My maternal grandfather was injured, and he was hospitalized a week before the Battle of the Bulge, and his entire platoon was wiped out.
Wow.
The only reason he survived is because he was in the hospital.
Yeah. How about that?
Yeah.
Well, that's why it happened. And there's Ike with General Zhukov, whose troops raped 2 million Berlin women. When the Soviets arrived in Berlin, they raped everything that moved. And the other image there's Eisenhower. This is during the war. He's in Moscow attending a parade. That's Eisenhower on top of Lenin's tomb with Zhukov and Stalin. Stalin loved Eisenhower. And that's why Eisenhower was put in that position. He was leapfrogged over hundreds of senior officers. This guy was almost kicked out of the army at one point for embezzlement. But they loved him. And they honored, here he is, guest of honor at Lenin's tomb. So everything was being done to preserve the East for the Bolsheviks at the cost of 250,000 American lives that didn't need to die, or very few of them needed to die, because the German generals in a heartbeat would have took that offer.
It's incredible, Mike. I don't know. I'm always left without words when we do this stuff, but it's amazing to me as a middle-aged person, how quickly in a short period of time you figured out that, or I figured out and woken up to the fact that, again, I'm saying something everyone already knows, but we're taught history about wars, and we're taught about battles and the give and take and the casualties and the strategy and everything. And I don't mean to completely by any means dismiss what the military does, but on the grander scale, when you're thinking about the people looking down on a chessboard, especially the wars of the 20th century, the last 100 years, it's like every last one of them was basically predetermined largely. What happened in between, of course, there's give and take, but like the outcomes of all this stuff right through Iraq and Afghanistan and everything else, it's all predetermined. It's just a matter of how they play act it out.
Yeah, the real story, and even in my books, I mentioned the battles, of course, but you'll notice with conventional history, there's overemphasis. Who needs to know every nuance of every battle and every maneuver? Maybe if you're a military historian, you're at West Point, the Army War College or something. The real story is about the men moving the chess pieces and why. That's the story, and they don't give you that. But that's the Cold War. It's sort of like a spinoff. They used to have Mork and Mindy spun off of Happy Days back in the day. You would have a sitcom, and then characters would get their own show. Well, the Cold War is a spinoff of World War II, by design, and you see how they engineered it. Oh, we don't want Hitler to take out the Soviet Union. We don't want that. So you had this fake alliance. They didn't really trust each other, by the way. So you see them at the big three. They're all chummy. FDR, Churchill, Stalin. But FDR, representing the globalists, he's thinking ahead of we could form a partnership with the Soviet Union to take over the world, or we could have a Cold War with them. Last thing on his mind is to topple Stalin. You see? And in Stalin's mind, if there's going to be a new world order, he's going to be the head of it. He's not going to take orders from London or New York. You see? So that's how the Cold War was. But they were already thinking back then about a Cold War. Because if you think about it, the psychology of having this massive external threat in the East, that really pushed the European countries together economically and politically, and that's how they built the European Union. That was greatly facilitated by the fact that that beast in the East was left intact, you see. So these are the kind of calculations they were making, unbeknownst to the poor guy in the trenches who's about to get killed. You know, you imagine if these fellows knew, you're fighting. By the way, the Germans want to lay down their arms, but we have to set up this thing called the Cold War. So then your sons could go die in Vietnam later on. It's just really sickening. It's the whole history it's as bad as the contemporary times we live in. It's just lie after lie, gaslighting, murder. Yeah,
and many would argue, rightfully so. I think that all this in World War II is not only the setup for the Cold War and all that, but of course it was the setup for the rise of the CIA and eventually Five Eyes and everything that we're really unwinding right now. By the way, I think that's why there's so many subliminal and overt World War II references that Trump puts out. I think that's why he's building the arch in DC. I think, there's a lot of symbolism of all the different really dark, notorious forces that really control this country, or controlled, I should say, this country and a large part of the Western world. On top of it, that all came out of that. That was
everything comes out of
that was their plan.
Israel
came out of it, of course. Yeah.
NATO, United Nations, World Health Organization, the whole damn structure. So.
Yeah, we just did a piece the other day on a short on the Frankfurt Institute, and their role and everything, and again transporting it over to Columbia University, all of it, and that's what that is. Going back to the first piece of the show, it's that it's not a 20 or a 30-year plan that we're unwinding right now. It's a century plus. And it's happening in a decade.
Yeah.
So I'm thankful for that.
Deeply rooted. Yeah.
Absolutely.
But these stories bookend each other, World War II and the Q operation. They really do. I mean, it started long before World War II even, but that was the event which enabled the whole foundation and the, and the blueprint to be built for the New World Order. It even says that in Q posts, by the way. So it all came out of that event. So you understand that, it's not so hard to understand why we turned down these offers to surrender from all of these German generals. It's much more than about just defeating Germany. We're thinking ahead of how we're going to build this New World Order structure. We got to keep this war going, and we got to make sure after the war that the Soviet boogeyman is up and running.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. Yeah. Well, great stuff as always, Mike. Thank you very much, guys. As a reminder, please make sure you go over to realnewsandhistory.com and support Mike's works. Get his books, sign up for his anti-New York Times emails. You can also follow him on X at Tomato Bubble on X. buymeacoffee.com/Mike King, and of course Mike King's Rumble channel. All of that is linked in the description below. Because of scheduling today, we did pre-record this show this afternoon. I know we don't normally do that, but it just worked out better for everybody today rather than, again, we try to avoid doing a repeat whenever possible. So appreciate you guys putting up with the lack of a live stream tonight. And of course, we thank you for any rants or subs or any of that kind of stuff that comes through. You guys know how much we appreciate that. And of course, we try to read those anytime we can, but obviously that wouldn't be possible tonight. And quick programming note, I'll be on with Rambo and crew tomorrow at normal time, 2 p.m. over on his channel on the Roundtable. And then also tomorrow night, again, we don't normally have a Thursday show, but I've been wanting to do this for a long time, finally getting a chance to put it together. Our good friend Chris from Old World Exploration will be joining us. And if you guys have been following that series we've been doing over the last couple of years on a lot of the Old World stuff, you know that there's a lot of theories around the asylums and the orphan trains. A lot of theories behind that and what that actually was and how that might have related to, quite frankly, who might have been left over from the last reset, or who might have been the truth tellers of the day that they were trying to keep away from the rest of the population. So it's a very interesting rabbit hole. We're going to be diving into that tomorrow night, Thursday, at 8 p.m. right here on News Trees. And so a lot coming up the rest of the week. As always, our thanks to Carrie Cat, Claudia Doug, and Magadai 1776 for all their help. Mike, as always, thank you for an incredible presentation. I want to throw it over to you for any final thoughts or anything you're working on for the week coming up.
No, just finishing up another World War II piece. It's going to go out tonight on Churchill, another monster who was completely owned by Bernard Baruch. In addition to like World War II is like one of my favorite topics, because they really are bookends, and just seeing this thing come together, to me has such like relevance, because I understand every little step of the way, and what they were doing all these years ago. And it's just ironic now how, after a new generation of Russian leaders came aboard, that they became liberated before we did.
Yeah. True point,
Unfortunately, because the mythology is so embedded and fossilized, they still promote the fake history of World War II in Russia. It's the glorious patriotic war, But I think in due time, once the storm passes and hits, a lot easier to correct fake history once people see everything that's happening is fake in the current day. And we are getting there. There's no question about it. Normies, I'm not talking about our community now. We're going outside the echo chamber. Normies are talking about Israeli influence over Trump. And that's something I'm going to be keeping an eye on, and a very exciting development, because it perfectly sets the stage for that happy false flag ending we're all waiting for.
Yep. I'm with you, my friend. I'm with you. Well, thank you, Mike. Appreciate it. And as always, thanks to each and every one of you for tuning in. We greatly appreciate your continued support. And if you would, hit that positive affirmation button, thumbs up, heart, and red pill over on pill.net. We greatly appreciate that. That's going to do it for us. We'll be back next week, same time, 8 p.m. with episode number 108 of the Q News Review with the one and only Mike King of realnewsandhistory.com. Thank you guys all for being here, and we'll see you on the next one. Good night, everybody. Take care.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
That song's from my old one-eyed father. Came back from the service with one eye. He never complained about it my whole life. And all the stuff I do for the great mighty USO, and all the good work they do for our fantastic military, it's all in dedication to my father. And I'd like to do this song for him tonight. American girls, American guys will always stand up and salute, and always recognize when we see old glory flying. There's a lot of men dead, so we can sleep in peace at night when we lay down our head. My daddy served in the army. We lost his right eye, and he flew our flag out in our yard. Till the day that he died, he wanted my mother, my brother, my sister, and me to grow up and live forever in the land of the free. This nation that I love is falling under attack. A mighty sucker punch came flying in from somewhere in the back. As soon as we could see clearly through our big black eye, man, we lit up your world like a 4th of July. Put your name on top of his list. Statue of the Liberty. battle will rage. Good guys win every time you rattle their cage. Man, you'll be sorry you messed with my U.S. of A. We'll put a boot in your ass, it's the American way. Hey, Uncle Sam, put your name top of his list. Statue of Liberty started singing his best. The eagle will fly, there's gonna be hell when you hear Mother Freedom start ringing her bell. It'll feel like the whole wide world raining down again. And it's broad take courtesy of the red, white, blue. Yeah. Oh, my red, white, blue. Oh, my red, white, and blue. God bless our military. Thank you. God bless America.
Treason. That's treason. They say, holy shit, they caught us. They caught us.
What storm, Mr. President?
You'll find out.
And they know the judgment day shall come.